Okay, and we're live. All right, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Just turn the air on real quick. Just get some of the humidity out. All right, we are ready to get started. Okay, so between last class and this class, you had chapter 7. Let me go ahead and get your scores. Okay. Maria,
95%.
thank you. Marva,
No, 100.
100.
Yeah.
Okay, Katie.
Pass.
Okay, Jera.
95.
Thank you. Alyssa.
-3.
Okay, thank you. Jordan. Jessica N.
95.
Edward. Jeanette.
95.
Sheridine.
90.
Sheridine, do you have 5 and 6 for me?
Yes. 5 is 100 and 6 is 95.
Thank you. Emily. Jessica.
90.
Thank you. Brooklyn. Kevin.
I got 100.
Thank you. Okay, any questions on what you read? Anything you need me to explain to you? Yes.
More just like you said with the review sheets and with what we're getting in class, we should be good for the written portion, right?
Correct.
Because it's a lot to retain, like the 6 and 7. I mean, it's just a lot of knowledge.
Right. So, did you happen to catch the game show yesterday?
I did.
Okay. Those are,
just one.
oh, good. Very good. Those are the types of questions that you would get on the
Okay.
state exam. So everyone expects the state exam to be very technical. It's not. The state written test is going to be scenario based.
Okay.
Because CNAs, when you're out in the field, it's not what you know.
It's putting it in a scenario.
That's right. It's how you respond to situations and knowing safety, patient rights, infection control, and how to apply those to patient care. That's what the written test is going to focus on. So it's not going to ask you how many washcloths do you need to perform a partial bed bath. That's not the kind of question you're going to get on the state exam. You might get, you are assigned to perform a partial bed bath on an unresponsive patient. Which of the following would be an important consideration? A, remain silent during the skill. B, ensure the patient is covered as much as possible, provide privacy. C, use side rails to keep the patient safe. Or D, always take a second person in with you, second caregiver in. What do you think would be the right answer?
Always take a second.
B. No. B. Make sure they're covered as much as possible.
Okay, why?
Well, you
To maintain
because
privacy.
yeah, it's for their own.
Okay.
For their own.
Okay, so you're assigned to perform care, a partial bed bath on an unresponsive patient. Okay,
It's
so
showing them dignity. It's still showing them dignity, even if they're not responsive.
Right,
Still treating
so-
them as a human.
if you remember the principles that we've learned, the things that we go over every single class, right? So out of those 4 choices, what we go over is the privacy blanket. Anytime the patient is uncovered or undressed, we need a privacy blanket, right? That never changes. It doesn't matter whether your patient is responsive, unresponsive, upside down, standing on their head, has a whole bunch of family in there, completely alone, does not matter. If a patient is uncovered or undressed, what do we need?
A privacy blanket.
So the rest of that question actually was there to throw you off. Okay, it was designed to throw you off. What it's asking is, do you know that principle? Anytime a patient's uncovered or undressed, we need a privacy blanket, right? Doesn't matter if they're unresponsive. That part of the question has no bearing on it whatsoever. I've never taught you to take a second caregiver in.
You don't have enough staff.
Right? So that hasn't been something that we've discussed at all. So out of the choices, right, have I told you that you need to use side rails and for safety?
I was just thinking, like, from my own experience, what would be appropriate,
Right.
like, for the patient?
So your biggest challenge is going to be unlearning,
Yeah.
not learning. So, and that's going to be where you're going to have to kind of focus. So to answer, and I say that in order to answer your question, right? So those review sheets that I give you at the end of each class have all of these principles on it.
So if we know the principles, we're good.
If you know the principles, remember principles guide performance, right? This really is the test. What you see up here, that really is the written test. We follow the
Care plan.
care plan, CNAs do, normal, principles, guide performance. So everything that I told you is telling you how to do the skills, right? We always have to focus on the
Patient.
patient, and then anything we notice, we report to. If you know those 5 things, you are guaranteed. And you answer the questions according to those 5, and those 5 things only. You are guaranteed to pass the written. Because every single question is going to boil down to one of these. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, especially for you specifically, but all of you will benefit from this. On my website, foryourcna.com, the very first thing you see at the top is the ebook. It's a free ebook. And I would encourage you to download. You have to put your email. I've already got your email address in, guys. I don't spam. I don't send emails out. In fact, I get yelled at a lot because I don't send emails out, right? So I'm not as proactive at marketing as I should be. So that ebook, you put your email address in, it's going to send it to you. It's going to go over the written test in detail. And it's a workbook style, so you actually engage with the content. And it explains the 5 things that you're going to be tested on. And how those questions are going to be presented. It's got sample questions in there that I actually break down for you and show you how to break the question down. And then it gives you another question that asks you to do the same thing. Okay? So these are the tools that you can use if you feel like you're going to have some challenges on the written test. Guys, the biggest problem with the written test is you overthink it. Do not add anything to the question. Do not add anything to the question. Don't take anything away. So that's the biggest challenge, is not to change, because the minute have you noticed that every question you ask, I always say, well, it depends, right? And I give you several different scenarios. Well, that's really what medicine is. Medicine is not hard and fast because no 2 patients are exactly alike. So if you're reading a question and you think to yourself, well, maybe they're this, then you've added something to the question which changed the answer. So the question stands alone. You can't add anything to it. You can't take anything from it. The question stands alone. Does that make sense? So when you're reading those answer choices, I want you to remember the principles that we've learned. Because I guarantee you, one of those principles applies to this answer. Good? Does that make sense? You guys are definitely well prepared for the written test. That's not where your challenge is going to be. Your challenge is actually going to be on the skills. So I'm going to try to get through today's lesson quickly. and give you about 45 minutes to an hour of practice time at the end of class today. You'll have about an hour to an hour and a half at the end of class on Monday. And then on Wednesday, you'll have some practice time after graduation as well. So from this point on, and you really should have had some on Monday, but I kind of ran late. From this point on, we're going to be practicing at the end of class. Now, for those of you joining us virtually, during practice time, I do stop live because I'm not teaching anymore. And you don't really need to see them practice. It's going to make them nervous. So we do stop the live during practice time. So today we should be ending somewhere around 12:15, depending on timing, okay? All right, so let's review. How do we know what to do with each patient? We look at the care plan, absolutely. And if you've noticed, a lot of the questions that pop up on the screen are asking how many hands do I wash on hand and nail care? Or do I do peri-care when I do partial bed bath, right? How do we know what those answers would be? The care plan, okay? So we're going to follow the care plan, the whole care plan, and what does that mean to us?
We don't add to or distract. It's what it says in care plan is what you do.
Right, don't change it in any way. What happens if you can't follow that care plan? What if the patient says no?
Let the nurse know.
Yeah, let the nurse know. Absolutely. Now, I would like you to get more information if the patient says no.
Yeah.
Because when you go to the nurse and you say, hey, I needed to do foot care on Mr. whoever, Mr. Howard, and he said no, do you know what the nurse is going to ask you?
Why did he say
Why?
no?
So if you have that information, it does help. Oh, well, his family is visiting, so I'll try to get to it later. Even in that situation, you have to let the nurse know.
Even if you'll do it later, she just needs to know that.
Right, and here's why. What if you approach Mr. Howard, ask, can I do foot care? He says, no, I got family here. Can we do it later? And you say yes. You don't let anybody know. A little later on in your shift, you get called home for an emergency. Okay? You have to leave. Are you going to remember to tell somebody that Mr. Howard didn't get his foot care? No, because now your mind is on your emergency, not on Mr. Howard's toes. You don't care about his toes right now. You got bigger fish to fry, right? So this is why everything you know, you need to let the nurse know. Everything. No matter how minute it seems to you. If you know it, the nurse needs to know it. Okay?
How do I ask why without making them feel defensive?
Right, and we got to be careful how we ask. So we don't want to say, well, why not? Don't you know I've got a job to do? You're messing up my timeline here. That's not how we want to approach this. The way I do it is, can I ask why? Is this just not a good time, or are you not feeling up to it? You know, what's going on in your life? What can I do to help you? A lot of times I'll offer to come back later. If this isn't a good time, we can do it later. Those are perfectly acceptable ways of approaching it, but you kind of have to watch your approach here. You don't want your patient to get defensive. And anytime you ask somebody why, they could get defensive. So be careful how you present that. Okay.
So maybe you're taking care of 5 patients, and maybe my first one says no to the foot care. But would it be okay to visit a couple more patients and then go to the nurse and say, or should I go right away?
Yeah, you don't have to go right away.
Yeah, because it could be too much.
Yeah, you don't have to. That's going to be prioritization.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And a lot of that's going to depend on what you're doing, right?
Right.
So you will have some test questions on prioritization. And I actually did a question yesterday on the game show about prioritization. So you're assigned to do the following 4 tasks. Which one needs to be done first? You will have a question on the state exam like that, asking you, because CNAs, you're going to get a whole bunch of tasks to do, and you got to know how to prioritize those tasks. So here are your answer choices. Ready? Okay, you got 4 tasks. These 4 tasks, which ones do you want to do first? A, pass food trays. B, answer a call light. C, prepare a patient for a procedure. Or D, take vital signs?
The answer is
Call
call
light.
light.
Why? Why is the call light the right answer?
Or it can just be an emergency.
Could be an emergency. Yeah, that's it. And the problem with call lights is that 99.9% of the time they are not emergencies. Can you get me a cup of water? Can you get me a blanket? I need help to the bathroom. They're not emergencies, right? So over time, what do you think your brain is going to tell you when a call light goes off?
Oh, it can wait.
It can wait. That's right. Now, we have to remember that those call lights really are there for emergencies. Unless you address that call light, you have no idea whether it's an emergency or not. So call lights should always be prioritized. Always. So if you get that question on the state exam, remember that call lights are always prioritized.
When you leave the patient's room after you hand them the car light, can you re-edify that it's there for an emergency? You say, Mrs. Jones, if there's any emergencies, here's your call light.
You can, but here's the problem, okay? Yes, the call lights are for emergencies, but they really are for other things too. And let me explain why, right? If you get thirsty, you're going to get up and go get a drink because you're capable, right? You're not going to call your family member when you're sitting on the couch saying, hey, go get me a drink, right? Because sometimes we do, but usually if you're capable, you're going to do it yourself, right? Well, patients in a facility, they're not at home. They're not independent. They're not able to do things on their own in a lot of cases because they're weak or they're sick or they're medicated or they're injured, right? So they may not be able to take care of these quote unquote nuisance things. If they're cold, they can't go to the blanket warmer and get a blanket. If they're thirsty, they can't go to the nutrition room and get a drink. Those areas are locked from them. So are they going to be able to take care of a lot of these needs that they would normally take care of at home? So even though that call light is there for emergencies, we have to remember they're not at home. They have to rely on you for things that they would normally do for themselves. You've told them, hey, don't get up and walk to the bathroom by yourself because you're a fall risk. And then when they hit the call light, we yell at them for interrupting us. They're doing what we told them to do, and then we get mad at them. That doesn't really seem fair, right? So we have to be careful to think about this from your patient's point of view. So yeah, that call light really is for emergencies, but in your patient's life, that drink really is an emergency. Have you ever had cotton mouth?
That's bad.
It will absolutely consume you. I need ice chips. I need a drink. I need something. My mouth is sticking together. I can't swallow. It feels like the Sahara Desert. You don't think that's an emergency in your patient's mind?
And
It is.
Yeah, it can make it hard to breathe too sometimes. Because I've had
Sure.
when I've had that cotton mouth, I find it hard to breathe.
Absolutely.
So it's
Absolutely.
kind of scary too. 'Cause just,
So that is an emergency in your patient's mind. It may not be to you. Oh my gosh, I've got to go get you more ice chips. Are you kidding me? Right? We tend to react in that way. But we have to think about how we would feel if we were in that patient position and had to rely on somebody else. Do you think your patients want to rely on you? They want to be independent. They want to be home. They don't want to be asking. It's like a 2-year-old thing to ask for water, right? The last time you asked for water was when you were too young to be able to get it yourself. So it really puts our patients in a very dependent position, and they don't like that. So be careful how you approach call lights. Does that make sense? Always think about it. If you were the patient and couldn't do these things for yourself, how would you want to be treated? Okay, good. Who do we report our observations to? The nurse. Okay. So our opening is done at the beginning of every skill. Every skill starts with the opening. Every opening starts with a knock. We're going to identify our patient by name. And what do we want to tell them about us? Okay, name and title. We also want to explain to them what we're doing. I don't care how you say it. I'm here to do foot care. I'm here to wash their feet. Doesn't matter how you say it, but make sure they understand what you intend on doing. We want to make them a partner. Once we've told them what we're going to do, what do we need to get from them? Permission, absolutely. Once we get permission, we're going to close the curtain, and then what do we do after we touch curtain?
Wash our hands.
Because we have to have what kind of hands to get our supplies? Clean hands. When we're getting supplies, we have to think about gloves. How do we know if we're going to use gloves?
Body fluids, unattacked skin.
Personal skin.
Personal skin.
Yeah, personal skin, non-intact skin, or body fluids. If the answer is no to all of those, if we're not going to touch personal skin, if we're not going to touch non-intact skin, if we're not going to touch body fluids, we don't need gloves. We're going to wash our hands before and after. Great. But if the answer to any of those is maybe or I don't know, then you want to throw on a pair of gloves because we don't know. Okay? If we do decide to wear gloves, what's the first thing those gloves should touch? The patient. And then once those gloves have touched the patient, what are they considered? Dirty. So we have to be careful about what else we touch in that environment. And then we want to make sure that we remove them correctly at the end of the skill by pinching up and then going under. Okay? If we're going to use supplies, we have to have a place to put them. We're going to use a barrier. And a barrier is going to provide a clean place for our clean supplies. That's right. And we can only touch supplies with what kind of hands? Clean hands. What can the supplies not touch? Your uniform. Yeah, or the floor. Yep. And when do we want to get that barrier? Before or after we get our supplies? Before. All right. We want to talk about privacy blanket. When would we use this? Anytime the patient is exposed, uncovered or undressed. All right. When we put the privacy blanket on, do we just take the sheet all the way off and then put the blanket on?
No.
How do we do this?
Blanket on first, over the sheet,
And then pull the sheet down underneath. Why is that important? Why did that make that on here? Why is that important? Okay, very good. Yeah, if you take that sheet all the way off of them, you're exposing them. It's not doing what it's supposed to do, right? It also may contribute to them getting cold. Have you guys ever gotten cold? Have you ever gotten chilled? It takes a long time once you get chilled to warm back up. So we want to try to prevent that from the very beginning. What should we not do with privacy blanket? Shake it or snap it. And then if we do use privacy blanket, when do we remove the blanket? When we're done after we remove our gloves. That is correct. Linen rolls. Now most of these are repeated on other principles. So linens can't touch your uniform. What kind of hands do you need? Clean. We don't want to shake or snap them. Clean rolls toward you. Dirty rolls away. We don't want those linens, clean or dirty, to touch the floor. And what do we do if we take too many supplies? Discard them.
Why is it that clean rolls towards you and dirty rolls away?
It's how because you can't really roll dirty toward you because the patient's laying on it. You have to think about the mechanics of it. Okay, the patient is laying on whatever's dirty, so you can't roll it toward you. You can only roll away from you because that's the area that's exposed. Does that make sense? That's just all about
It
mechanics.
was just like, I just think about it as like, well, if your uniform is dirty and you're rolling a clean sheet towards you, there's more risk it's going to touch your uniform, so why wouldn't you roll the dirty towards you?
And that's a great thought process. I really like how you're thinking about that. However, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this, we're not trying to go for sterile. We're trying to keep it as clean as possible, which is why we don't want anything to touch our uniform. But don't get too deep in the weeds there because the patient's still in the bed. And they're the source of all the dirty. All right. Skin and roll. Where does patient need to be at all times? The center of the bed. What will you not have use of most of the time? Side rails. Remember, you can't rely on side rails for safety. Is that me?
That's you.
Ooh, you turn your light on.
I know.
I gotta turn mine off.
Sorry, guys. I'm teaching. I'm not going to answer that. Okay. So if we're going to turn a patient onto their side, what do we have to do first? Scoot towards you. That way, after the turn, where are they? In the center of the bed. And do we turn patients toward us or away from us? Away. We remain behind the patients behind. Okay. Oh, Sahara. Hello. I've listened to your classes and watched your skills video till my eyes hurt. That's funny. And I passed my test yesterday. Thank you for all that you do. Congratulations, Sahara. That's awesome. Sorry to make your eyes hurt, though.
There's another one. Tamika.
Oh, Tamika, good morning, Miss Patty. I passed my exam yesterday. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Awesome. Now, why are you guys stressed about the test? They're not even in my class. They're not even in this room.
Well, apparently I have a lot to unlearn before I do it.
But think about that, right? Why are you guys stressed? You're right here in the room with me. They watched until their eyes hurt. Okay? So what that tells you is that our method is effective. All you got to do is follow the path I've laid out for you. Okay? Good job, guys. Super proud of you. All right, so if we're going to bathe something, if we're going to wash something, there's some rules here. What do we not add to our basin? Soap, because we need water for rinsing. Absolutely. If we're going to turn the water on, what do we need to turn the water on? Paper towel. We're going to check the water. How should it feel?
Warm.
Okay. Who else has to check the water? Patient. If we're going to wash a wet body opening, what method do we need? Yeah, the leaves that four corners, however you want to call it. But we need to make sure that we're using a different area of the washcloth for each stroke. When we're washing, we have to be careful not to get our surface wet. If the surface gets wet, address it during the test. So if you're doing a partial bed bath and the sheet gets wet, don't ignore it. I guarantee you those evaluators saw it. So don't ignore it. You don't have to change a sheet, but you do have to say the sheet is wet. I would change it before the end of the skill. You need to address it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Is that the same for barrier too?
Barrier we're going to remove from the table and throw away. So the barrier's okay, but what if that water dripped onto the floor?
Then you
It's a hazard.
Right, it's a slipping hazard. We have to
you
clean it
just,
up.
like put gloves on and use a paper towel to clean it up.
Absolutely.
And then dispose of it all.
Absolutely. So the key here, guys, is no drippy wet washcloths. If you don't have drippy wet washcloths, then you don't get the sheet or the barrier or the floor or anything wet. So wring those washcloths out really well. Okay. If we're going to put lotion on, what do we do before? What do we do after? Wipe it. All basins are cleaned the exact same way. Rinse, dry, store. Use paper towel to open the drawer. Okay. If a patient's feet hit the floor, we got to talk about their are slipper socks ever enough? No. If we're going to use a gait belt, how do we know it's tight enough? 4 fingers. Before we stand a patient, their feet must be flat on the floor. Before we lift them, we want to make them a partner. So what can we do to kind of let them know that we're about to lift them?
Count to 3
Count to 3 and their hands should be
on our shoulders.
on your shoulders. Very good. Once we stand them up, we want to ask them if they're dizzy or weak, or if there's a problem, I want to know here, not there. And when we return the patient to the chair, before we help them sit, what do we need to know?
Make sure that they can do the chairs.
That they can feel the chair. Yep. And proper body mechanics here is 1 foot in front, 1 foot beside, and bend at the knees, not the hips, when you're helping somebody stand. Okay? Not directly in front. Directly in front can pull the patient off balance. Every skill ends the exact same way with the closing. We want to make sure that we leave the patient in what kind of an environment? Clean. Bed should be in the,
Those positions.
we want to address preferences. So what kind of preferences can we address here?
How do you want?
What's that?
How do you want the bed?
How do you want the bed? Yeah, head of the bed up or down? Would you like a
Magazine.
magazine? Okay, what word do they need to hear? Comfortable. Once we get all of that done and we give them their call light, we can open the curtain, and then you got to get rid of those patients' cooties. So how are you going to do that? Wash your hands. If you need to chart, document, when would you do that?
Right after.
After you wash your hands, but then what do you have to do?
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands again, because our standard is in skill with clean hands. Don't tell me you guys aren't ready. Don't tell me you're not ready.
That's a great question. When you are working, this might be an answer where you tell me it depends on the facility. Are you allowed to carry lotion with you? Because I mean, like we all know, the soap and the hand sanitizer is supposed to have lotion in it. But
Yeah, it's
not
still
always the
gonna,
best.
no, it's still going to dry your hands out. Absolutely.
So
Yes, you should carry lotion with you, or at least apply lotion a couple of times a shift, just to keep, because you don't want your skin to dry out. When your skin dries out, it cracks. And now what do we add in?
Pathogens.
Yeah, more wet body opening, sure. And now we have a pathogen problem. So yes, keeping your skin hydrated is actually an important component of being a CNA. Now, you're probably not lucky enough to have the best friend I have. My best friend is not in medical at all. She has been my best friend since we were 10 years old. I have actually 2 best friends, and there's a group of 3 of us, and we have been friends since we were 10 years old. And we still get together every single year. I talk to them every day. I am very fortunate to have awesome best friends. But the one in particular, she every year buys me high-end hand lotion for Christmas.
So what kind do you recommend that you found that's really
So what she always gets me, and it's a bit pricey,
Yeah.
and it's called L'Occitane. It's LOCCITANE. And then I'm not a spokesperson. I don't get paid for this. This is not a product endorsement. This is what she buys for me. Okay. But it is very high quality hand lotion. And it's from France. Yes, it works great.
It doesn't leave you greasy, like that greasy
A little bit, but not as much as you would think. Okay, it absorbs pretty well. So just like I do with patients, I apply the lotion and then I wipe off the excess. Now, in here we do have Bath and Body Works, and that's a little bit more kind of water based, right? The stuff I just told you about is more oil based. Bath and Body Works is okay. I mean, it does work. However, how many of you guys know Trader Joe's? You guys know Trader Joe's?
Yeah, it's a good place.
Okay. The high-end lotion I just told you about,
Yeah.
at Trader Joe's during Christmas, they have sample. It's the same lotion at like 10% of the cost.
Right.
Only
So-
during Christmas.
That's usually when she gets it. But you can check other times. If you go there, check. It's in like a metal-looking tube.
God's silver, she found it.
Yep.
You found it online?
It looks like
Oh, okay.
Amazon.
Yep. Amazon.
Now, if we get it at Trader Joe's, is it under the same name or does
No,
it have Trader
no.
Joe's name?
Trader Joe's always repackages everything
Okay,
under their,
name.
yeah,
But it would come in a metal thing like
right.
that.
That's how
what
you
for.
know. Yeah.
That's how you know. Okay.
So when you apply lotion to your hand, it wouldn't be considered like contaminating your hand because it's in your uniform.
So for me, when I'm working in a clinical setting, okay, when I'm in a clinical setting, generally speaking, before I go on break, right, we wash our hands. That's when I apply my lotion. So when I go on break, before I start my shift and at the end of the shift. So I don't apply it while I'm working with patients because I'm just going to wash it right off. I'm washing my hands before and after every skill, so it doesn't really make sense.
Right.
But before I go in, I'll put lotion on
Right.
and wipe off the excess. I'll go in, get my report. By then it's already, soaked in. So that kind of gives me coverage up until my break. My break, I wash my hands, I apply lotion. Now I've got 15 or 30 minutes, depending on how long my break is, for it to soak in before I have to wash my hands again. So that's just kind of my routine. Now you'll work on your own routine. So yes, in a certain aspect, this is going to depend on you, but that's the routine that worked for me.
Yeah, and we don't have to worry about bacteria because I heard before that bacteria can get in lotion. Like if you have it over 6 months or something, it can get bacteria inside of there. So maybe you just need to make sure you use it up within a certain amount of time. I mean, that's not even true.
I can't remark on that because I haven't read any studies
Okay.
on it.
Okay.
I would think that because the lotion is encased in a tube, as long as nothing got into the tube, it would be okay.
As long as you don't touch like where the lotion comes out of the tube to anything. That's
Yeah.
good.
It should be
It's like
okay.
it's like a toothpaste cap. You want to wipe around the tooth. Like if you're squeezing out more lotion than you're wiping off, and it like crusts around the cap, and then
Right.
every time you open that, that's a wet, moist environment.
Okay,
Right.
That's a good idea.
Like I said, I haven't read any studies on it. It would be an interesting science fair project. For those of you looking for a science fair project, that would be a great science fair project. But I don't know. I don't know. My lotion never lasts me that long. So.
I know, right? Right.
All right. So don't tell me you guys aren't ready. Okay. You know the principles. And remember, the principles are what's going to guide how we do these skills. Now, let's get into the skill specific steps, right? We know all of that applies to every skill. Now let's get into the skill specific review. Ready? Okay. So when we're taking a pulse, pulses are always reported over what time period?
1 full minute.
1 full minute. And how long do we count for? According to the care plan. What's a normal pulse value? 60 to 100. What finger can you not use? What part of the fingers do you want to use?
Fingertips.
Fingertips. Where is the radial pulse located? On the thumb or pinky side of the wrist? Thumb side. And the arm should always be supported, right? So when we're counting with evaluators, how do they know when we're going to? How do they know when to count?
We're gonna
We're going to say start and stop, and at the end of the skill, we have to make sure we document. Very good. All right, dressing a resident. How do we remember how to dress a resident with a weak arm? USA first. What does that mean? Undress strong arm first. And then which arm do we dress first? Weak arm first. This allows the garment to slide off and on that weak arm without a lot of motion. When do we get the clothing? Before or after we undress our patient? Before. What does the patient get to choose here?
What they wear.
What they want to wear. Sure, so we want to ask, what do you want to wear? How do we lift extremities? From below with a flat hand. Very good. And we always support all joints when lifting. Remember that. Don't overextend or force movement. Yeah, don't break their ankle, please. At the end of the skill, after we get them dressed, you want to take a second to stop and look at your patient and make sure their clothing is neat, presentable, in the right place. Absolutely. Everything you took off of the patient goes in the hamper or dirty linen area. And where do we put the call light? Stronger hand.
So, towards the beginning of class, you said that you are judged based off of how your patients look,
Right.
and that some patients might pick a pink top, some, I don't even
Lime green pants.
green pants.
Yep.
So, if they do that, you said you do have the right to try and guide them to a different top.
You
and
can't
different pants.
suggest an alternative.
How do you go about saying something?
So the way I do it is, oh, Mary, do you want to try your white shirt with those pants? I bet that would look really nice.
So, just act like a friend.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean that's what I would do to my best friend. Oh, honey, how about that white shirt? You know, I mean, what would you do to your friend, right? So you can be nice about it. Now you don't want to say, oh my gosh, that does not go together. What are you thinking? That's awful. We don't want to go there, but you can suggest an alternative. However, if she says, no, I want my hot pink shirt, it's bingo day and that's my lucky shirt. Well, I don't want to, derail her bingo streak. So we're going to get that hot pink shirt. No problem. And I'm going to wish her luck at bingo. Okay. So you can be a person. You do not need to be a robot. You are there to provide emotional support as well as physical support. So you can be a person. Just don't be disrespectful. Okay? Me personally, I always think about I have two patients in my head at all times. My aunt, who died of cancer, who was younger, and my grandmother, who was older and very prim and proper. Okay, those are my two patients. Now, I responded to both of them a little bit differently, right? My aunt, who was younger, I kind of played around with her a little bit. I would say things, I would get her to smile, I would try to cheer, I would respond to her a little differently. My grandmother, I was a little more formal with because she was very proper. So you kind of have to learn to read your patients a little bit as well. But I always kind of keep those two people in my head as a guide. Now, there is a third person that I always have in my head as well. And he was a neighbor of mine for 15 years. And they had no children. They had adopted us as their kids. And anytime he had a lot of health issues, the wife would come over and get me. And I would react to him a little bit differently. Okay. So he was kind of a jokester, a prankster. And I had a different relationship with him. Now, I will tell you, there are some patients that I am like that with. But you have to read the room. Okay. If in doubt, don't go there.
Is that who your plaque is from on the wall?
Yes.
I was wondering.
Yes.
She has a plaque in there that says from her neighbor that how much they appreciated her. So it's on the wall by the bathrooms.
Yeah. And they are still very near, and he's passed on, but still very near and dear to my heart. But oh yeah, I would respond to him a little differently than I responded to other people because that's the relationship we had. That's how I got through to him. Okay. All right. So hand and nail care. Again, we want to support the hand and wrist and all. You see in a pattern there, anything we lift, we support, right? We're going to soak the hand in water. Whatever we wash, we rinse, we dry. We want to put the hand on a towel when we take it out, and we're going to clean under the nails with an orange stick. Which end? Flat side. What do we want to do between nails? Wipe it. If we're going to file the nails, how do we file? One direction. We want to apply lotion first or last? Last. Making an occupied bed, the patient needs to be where? Center of the bed at all times, but we want them on their side when we're trying to change a sheet. We want less of the body on the bed. So clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. We want to remain behind the patient's behind. What do we not want on the sheet underneath the patient? Wrinkles, absolutely. You want to make hospital corners to get those corners off the floor. You don't want the corner of the sheet to touch the floor. Hospital corners will accomplish that. They don't have to be perfect, guys. They don't have to be perfect. I've been making hospital corners since I was 3. My grandmother, who was prim and proper, when you got out of bed, you made your bed. You didn't go out for breakfast until your bed was made. And part of making your bed is hospital corners. So, I've been, guys, if a 3-year-old can do it, we can do it, right? When we make hospital corners, it's going to make the sheet push the toes down. So what do we want to do? Loosen the sheet. Very good. And we're going to replace the pillowcase with the opening facing away from the door. Very
I was
good.
going to ask you one question about the pillowcase.
Sure.
Because when I put my pillowcases in at home, I put the base of the pillow under my chin and I hold it while I slide on the case. But I think I'm not supposed to do that.
Yeah,
in a hospital setting.
I would not recommend that because
No.
that patient has drooled and breathed on that pillow.
Yeah.
And I don't want it.
Touching your uniform.
And I'll be
Yeah, I don't want it
contaminating
right underneath my chin. The other problem is that pillow is now touching the uniform, so we're
Right.
putting pathogens on it.
Right.
A better way is to scrunch the pillowcase up like a stocking,
Yeah.
put it on top of the pillow, hold it, and then pull the sides down.
Okay.
Can we put it on top of the bed to give support to?
Yes, on the table or on the bed. Because after we put the pillowcase on it, where does it go?
On the bed.
On the bed. So it's perfectly okay.
But could I like have the pillow standing or like?
It's okay. It's okay. All right, so side lying position. We're going to turn our patient over onto their side and use some pillows to prop them there. To turn somebody who can't turn themselves, we're going to position all 4 extremities. So furthest arm goes, closest arm goes, closest knee is bent with the foot on the bed, furthest knee is angled away or out. Very good. We want to roll patient onto their side in the, where in the bed? Center of the bed. And we're going to put a pillow behind their back in a roll. We're going to put one between their legs, specifically between the knees and what's below the knees?
My ankles.
Ankles, because you don't want those bones rubbing together. We're going to put a pillow under the top arm, under the elbow. And then there's one more pillow we have to think about. It's already on the bed.
Put the head.
Under the head. Very good. Call light's going to go in the bottom arm. Very good. Very good. All right. Foot care, just like hand and nail care, a little lower and nothing with the nails. So we're going to soak the foot in the water. We're going to take it out and put it on a towel. We'll wash it, put it back in the basin to rinse it, take it out to dry. We don't want to put lotion where?
Between
Between
Between the toes. Why are we doing foot care?
To check for
To look, right. We have to look at the skin. So during the skills, somewhere along the way, you need to say, I'm looking at the skin, or I don't see any red areas, or your skin looks good, or nothing to report. You got to address it somehow. Those evaluators need to know that you know why you're there.
The reason we don't put lotion between your toes is because it could be a chance for bacteria to grow. Is that the reason, or
Well,
why am I not doing that?
Yes, because athlete's foot primarily,
Okay.
because warm, dark, moist.
Okay.
Your toes are already dark. They're in a sock that holds in heat. So we have warm and dark.
Right.
That makes us sweat. So now we have moist. When you have lotion there, it holds that moisture in. It keeps it from evaporating,
Right.
which can lead to fungal infections like athlete's foot,
We put lotion on the foot, but just not between the toes.
not between the toes.
Okay.
Right. All right. After we wash the foot and we've looked at the foot, what are we going to put back on the patient? Sock and shoe. We don't want that bare foot to touch the floor. So make sure that it's on the barrier at all times. Or a towel. All right, mouth care. Don't overthink this, guys. You're brushing teeth. What position does patient need to be in? Upright, absolutely. Since they're upright and they need to spit, how are we going to protect their clothing? A towel, very good. What do we want to do to a toothbrush before we put toothpaste on it? Wet it. You want to brush what's there? brush, top, bottom, front, back, tongue. There's no time requirement here, just brush. But after we brush, what do we need to let them do? Rinse, spit. Yeah, once, twice,
As much as they need it, you ask
much
them.
as they need. Absolutely. There's no specifics here. Whatever they need. If you use a lot of toothpaste, you're going to be standing there rinsing for a long time. So a little dab will do you. Yep. And then after the skill is over, how do we want to leave our patient? Dry. Make sure you look at them. Remember that is the most missed checkpoint.
So I have a question for you.
Mhm.
If they have dentures and you're getting ready to do mouth care and you're not allowed to take those dentures out, you talk to the RN. How does that all play out? Is she the one that takes them out? Who takes them out? If they're not able to do it for
The
themselves.
patient.
The patient does it. But if they can't do it for themselves,
Then we don't use dentures. We puree their food.
Okay.
And that'll be like in the meal plan. Like the
Right.
kitchen will know to puree their food.
Right. Right.
But the debris still gets in their mouth. How do you clean their mouth?
You brush it.
So you do the same thing. You do the mouth care part of denture care.
You just
Mhm.
do you use the sponge for that? And not-
Whatever the facility is telling you to use. Toothbrush. You can use a toothbrush, a soft toothbrush. There's nothing wrong with that. You can also, it actually doesn't. It doesn't. Think about babies, right? Before we start brushing babies' teeth, you generally do something with their gums. We use that nubby thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same.
It doesn't, yeah, a soft brush doesn't hurt. You can use a soft brush. You can also use a sponge, the toothpick. Either one is fine. Go by your facility policy. But a lot of it's going to be patient preference.
You could just ask them how they want it done.
Sure.
Yeah.
If
Absolutely.
they want floss and it's not provided,
Check with the nurse. Yep. Flossing is not something that we generally do as CNAs. You can floss. There's nothing wrong with it. But the chances of you cutting the gums is pretty high.
Couldn't you also dislocate the jaw doing that? Because you still have to use pressure to push down. and
Right,
keep
especially
it-
toward the back. Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
if you got a patient who wants to floss, would you suggest those little flosser things
they
where
do it themselves.
they do
If
it
you have a
themselves?
patient that wants to floss and can't do it themselves, we need to talk to the nurse and find the right answer for that patient.
At that point, I wouldn't care.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you that this is not high on your nurse's priority list. Yeah, it's not. It's not.
I'm sure that's the last thing I think.
Short-term care, hospitals, yeah, you can floss when you get home. We're not doing that for you if you can't do it yourself. Long-term care,
You're on your way.
yeah, you know, there's sacrifices that will be made.
Your teeth are your last.
Yeah, there's sacrifices that will be made. And that's just, unfortunately, no one's going to take care of your body like you do.
Right.
It's that simple. No, we're going to do what we can. We're going to help where we can, but nobody's going to take care of your body like you do. Which is why a lot of what we have talked about in this class is geared toward restoring independence, letting our patients do as much for themselves as possible, not trapping them in bed with side rails, helping them walk using ambulatory techniques, doing range of motion, right? All of those things are designed to restore our patients' independence because nobody will take care of you like you. And if we, unfortunately, by trying to do something good, actually make our patient more dependent, have we really done something good? No. Does that make sense? So everything we do is geared toward restoring independence in our patients to the extent possible. And that's really important that we understand that because 20 years ago, that was not our focus. 20 years ago, we trapped everybody in bed. You had to have permission to get out of bed. And what we found is that actually led to a much worse outcome for our patients. Anthea says, when you dress the patient, you leave them in a sitting position and remove the sheet. Okay, yes, in the video, yes, they're in a sitting position and there's no sheet on them for the skills video. Yes, that is correct. But in a clinical setting, what's going to dictate this? Could be the care plan, but more likely, it's all part of the closing, right? I'm going to ask, how do you want the head of the bed? And if they're uncovered or undressed, we need to cover them. But what if they're dressed? Then it becomes patient preference choice. Okay. So, Anthea, yes, in the video, you do see the patient sitting up and no sheet on them, and that's perfectly fine because they're dressed. But in a clinical setting, we're just going to ask, what do you want? And I'm going to tell you, most of the time when we get somebody dressed, completely dressed, they're not staying in bed. If they're staying in bed, we're not completely dressing them. We're probably putting a gown on them, right? So if they're staying in bed, they're going to have a sheet on because they've got a patient gown on. If we're getting them fully dressed, that means that's where the scene stopped. It's not where the patient's care stopped. Good? Make sense?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Like if there's family in the room and she might say, well, I can floss the teeth for them, or I can do this for them or do that. I don't know how much becomes a liability issue for the facility of that patient.
Again, you're going to take that information to the nurse and
Okay.
let them make your remember that we don't make decisions.
Right.
So if you ever have in your mind, well, I'm not sure if that's what should that automatically trigger?
Talk to the nurse.
Talk to the nurse. Absolutely.
So the family might say, well, I can do that. And I would need to say,
Let me just check with the nurse real quick.
okay, gotcha. Okay.
We don't have to make it a big production.
Right. No.
Just, yeah, that sounds good, but let me just check with the nurse real quick.
Yeah, I
And
like
you
that.
come back and they're already out.
That's fine. So let me ask you a question. And remember, I'm trying to figure out how to put this. Let me explain this to you in a little different way.
Mhm.
Okay. If we weren't there, who would be taking care of these patients?
My family.
Oh, I don't have my mic on. Sorry, guys. If we weren't there, if healthcare didn't exist, how would this patient be cared for?
Hopefully family. But
By their family. Right? Which means that the family is more likely to take into consideration what the patient wants. Where things get messed up is when we come in and think we've got a better way. And we start insisting that things get done our way. Right? That's where we run into problems. And in a lot of settings, the family still takes care of the patient. A lot. When my mother was in the hospital, who do you think bathed her?
You did. I bet your family.
Absolutely. She was way more comfortable with me bathing her than some stranger. So I would ask them, hey, can you bring me everything I need for a bed bath? I'll take care of it. And the staff's like, cool.
Yeah, they appreciate you.
Because it means that one less thing they get.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yes, family should be involved because here's the other part of it. This patient's probably not going to be in this setting forever. Where are they going to go? Home. And who's going to take care of them? The family. So let's help the family learn how to care for their family member appropriately, right? So the real danger with healthcare is that we tend to think that we know it all and we're the only ones that can do it and no one else gets to be involved. And we have to remember that we're just there to help, not take over. So in most cases, as the nurse, you come to me, daughter wants to floss the teeth. I'm going to go, cool. Does she have floss? Because we don't have any here. You know, tell her to go get some floss sticks. She can floss. That's fine.
Right.
I have no problem with that. Now, if the patient is undergoing chemotherapy, I'm going to go in and tell the patient or the family member, flossing is probably not a great idea right now under chemotherapy because the gums are much more likely to bleed. So let's hold off on that. But I'll get in touch with the doctor and maybe see if we can get a mouth rinse that might be a little bit better instead of flossing. So if you didn't come to me though and let me know that the family wanted to floss, then that may not get addressed, right? See, these are all things that as a CNA, you don't know to think about. That's why you can't say, sure, you can floss. You need to bring it to me because I know what's happening with the patient.
Here's my next question: if they do have a chemotherapy and the CNA is getting the nurse, why the CNA is getting the nurse and the family's already starting on it? What would
That's
you,
fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Even though they might have the
It's their family member.
Gotcha.
They have ownership of that family member. We don't.
So if they do anything wrong while they're in the facility, it's still on them though?
Sure. Absolutely. And here's why. If somebody is going to sue, who's that somebody going to be? The family member.
So they're not going to sue themselves.
Right. They're not going to sue themselves.
But I mean, you always have those people out there that are like, well, she didn't tell me, blah, blah, blah.
Sure, absolutely. That's why we report as much as we can to the nurse, but we're not going to physically stop a family member from caring for their family. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'll make this very personal, okay? I am at my mother's bedside. She is, at the time, very, very sick. And I know she hasn't had a bath in 2 days. And she's feeling pretty icky. And I know she'll feel a little better if I can get her cleaned up and in a clean gown. So I go to the staff. I say, hey, can you get me the stuff I need to do a bed bath? And I'm going to get my mom cleaned up. If they told me no, how do you think I'm going to react to that? That's my mother. That is, who do you think you are to tell me that I can't bathe my mother? We have to remember that ownership of the patient is not with the facility. The facility does not own that patient. Who owns that patient? The family. They are loaning that patient to us to help control whatever's happening. We do not own that patient. And this is where medicine gets a little off track sometimes because there are a lot of healthcare professionals that act like they own that patient. And that is not our role. And that should never, ever, ever be your role. Because I'll guarantee you, you start that with me, I'll pull my mom out. Okay. So we have to be really careful not to cross those lines and take each situation as it comes. Now, yes, there are some families out there that are looking to make trouble. I see them all the time. Okay. I see them at Walmart. I see them at Aldi. People that are out looking for a problem. And if there isn't one, they're going to make one. Right? They're in our community. We know this. We know this. And yes, you're going to have them in healthcare too. Handle each situation as it comes, but never handle it alone. CNAs do not handle situations alone. We do what we can do. And if we can't do it, what do? Yeah, because I guarantee you, if I've got a problem family member, and yeah, they happen. If I got a problem family member, I'm bringing that to my supervisor as the nurse. I'm bringing that to my supervisor's attention. And they're probably going to bring it to the ethics committee attention. This is not a problem with you and the patient's family anymore. This is a problem with the facility. They've got your back. Okay. Hopefully. Yeah. And that is the goal. Hopefully. If not, they'll take you off the case. And it could be a personality issue. Sure. Absolutely. Could be there's people I don't like. I get along with a lot of people. I'm pretty even keeled, right? But there are some people I don't like. I had one in the store the other day. If she comes back into my store, God help her. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jacob asked her, can I help you find anything? And she said, no, I'm just looking. And she was a little rude about it. He let it roll off. Okay, no problem. And then she started complaining she couldn't find what she was looking for. So he asked, is there anything specific I can help you find? And she actually told him, you need to be quiet and let me shop. I'm sorry. What? You don't treat my employees that way. No, absolutely not. So, yeah, there are some people out there that are just looking for a fight. And the worse our economy gets, guys, the more people are looking for a fight. So, yes, we are going to have those, but you never fight alone. Okay? Bring it to your supervisors. So that's what he did. He brought it to my attention. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. And God help that person if they come back into my store.
Well, that's good that you're looking out for employees. That's so
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely. I also look out for my customers. If my employees need to be corrected, I'll be the first in line. Absolutely.
Can you follow me around and be my nurse?
Yes, please.
Do you do private hiring?
Private healthcare.
There are a lot of good nurses out there
Yeah.
that still have their heart in the right place. Find those and stick close. Okay, find those and stick close. One piece of advice, and we're like off track again, but one piece of advice I will give you, because we're getting close. We only have 1 week left. You've only got 2 classes after this. One piece of advice I like to give my students is when you go interview at facilities, I want you to remember that you are there to interview the facility.
Yes, that's important.
You're not there begging for a job. You are there to interview that facility and make sure it's one that you want to work at. And it's perfectly okay to ask to shadow, or could you show me around the unit and talk to some of the staff, talk to the nurses. If everybody is very standoffish, if they don't want to meet you, if they're too busy, if you don't get a good vibe, move along, because you're going to hate going to work every day. Now, if the staff stops and says, "Oh, it's very nice to meet you," if you get a good vibe, that's a good sign. But remember, you're there to interview them just as much as they're there to interview you. You are in demand. You will have a certification that is needed in our communities. You have options. Okay. So remember, they need to make a good impression on you as well. Good. One of the things I would ask is, how are conflicts handled? Conflicts with staff members, conflicts with patients or families. How are conflicts handled in this setting? Basically, do supervisors have our back? Right? That's a great question.
Are we allowed to ask the facility about their staffing, like how many CNAs?
Oh, absolutely. In your skills book, toward the end, we'll get into this on the last day. I go through all of this, but I have a whole list of questions that you can take in to your interview. You should be asking questions, and you should have a little notebook in your pocket to jot down the answers. Absolutely. All right, respirations. What do we not want to tell our patients? Yeah, that we're counting respirations. What's normal? 12 to 20. In and out is counted as 1. Again, you have to say start and stop, so evaluators know when you start and stop. And because we counted something, we have to do what at the end? Document. Range of motion. We want to lift from below, support. Flexion extension is what kind of motion? Abduction, adduction is what kind of motion?
Side to side.
Rotation is what kind of motion? Around. How do we know what exercises to do? How do we know what body part to exercise? How do we know how many repetitions? Just follow the recipe, guys. This is the easiest skill. Easiest. Follow the recipe. All right. Dentures. Dentures come in 2 parts. We're going to clean the dentures and the mouth they came out of. So when we're cleaning dentures, what kind of water do we want to use? Cool or cold, yeah. What do we want to put in the bottom of the sink? Washcloth or towel, something to make it a softer surface. Do we take dentures out?
No.
Do we put them in?
No.
Okay, patient has to be able to do that. If they can't,
we'll puree their food. When we are done cleaning the dentures, where do they get stored? In the container. And what kind of water? Clean, cold water. What do we want to put under the container? Paper towel. And then we're just going to do mouth care like we do mouth care for everything else. Okay. This skill requires how many sets of gloves? 2 sets. Very good. All right. Ambulate with a gait belt. Eyes on the patient at all times. Remember that. This is what ambulating is grading us on. Are you paying attention to your patient? What do we want to remove before we stand the patient up? Obstacles. We have to make sure the patient has what on their feet? Shoes. And that their feet are flat on the floor. Very good. Does a gait belt go over or under the patient's clothing? Over. Let me tell you a little story about this. I know we're low on time, but let me tell you a little story about this. So there was somebody who was testing who did not understand how a gait belt was used. They evidently had not had any introduction to a gait belt at all. None. So they get assigned this skill, and this is what the evaluator was explaining to me was happening inside the room. So the CNA or the person testing put the gait belt around their waist and had the patient hold on to it. And then figured that's probably not right. So sat the patient back down, took it off, put it around the patient's chest and started pulling from the front and thought, no, that doesn't look right either. So then she took it off and tried to figure out a way of getting it around both of them before the evaluator stopped her.
She's trying to go around the shoulders and the waist, like do it diagonally or something.
Around both of them.
Oh, both the people, her and the patient. Oh, okay.
That's a recipe.
Oh yeah. It's too bad she didn't get trained properly. That was all.
So, guys, this is not a hard skill. Okay, I've got this up there for a reason. Gait belts go over the patient's clothing at their waist. How do we know it's tight enough? 4 fingers. Absolutely. Who's going to lead here? The patient at their pace. Where do we hold the gait belt? In the back. When we're lifting them, we want to be on the sides or in the back, not from the front. And when we're walking, we need to have an underhand grip from the back. Who should be in our view at all times? The patient. And remember, that's what they're grading us on.
So we need to make sure we got our eyes on that patient.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As we're walking, we should be asking the patient,
How are you feeling? Are you feeling
Yep.
dizzy? You doing okay?
we doing all right? Yep. Something like that. And then we're going to assist the patient both when we stand them up and when we sit them down. And when we remove the gait belt, what do we not want to do on the skin? Good. All right. Partial bed bath. Look how much we've learned, guys. Yeah, Monday. Yeah. Yep. I know. Yesterday class.
Yesterday.
Okay, so partial bed bath. What areas are we going to wash? Easy answer. Care plan. Yeah. Read the care plan and follow it. Remember, that's always the easy answer. Easy answer. When I ask you, what are you going to do? Your answer is always the care plan. So for this skill, we're going to wash face to waist, front and back. Where are we going to wash first? Face. And what do we not want to use on the face? Soap. What kind of method do we want to use on the face? The leaves method. That gives us a clean leaf for every body opening, right? What do we want to control during cleaning? No floppy corners. What do you want to control? The washcloth. Very good. You don't want to just take that washcloth and ball it up and just start scrubbing, because that gives floppy corners. Now we've got water everywhere, but it also can hit the patient as well. You want that washcloth folded and controlled at all times. Does that make sense?
And wrung out good.
Yeah, and wrung out good. No drippy wet washcloths. What are we going to do if the water gets cold or soapy? Change it. Now, at some point, we're going to wash the arm, the top, and the bottom. That means we have to lift the arm. How do we lift? From below. We're going to support at the joints. All right. We want to turn on their side to wash, rinse, and dry the back. And then we're going to provide what kind of service to help our patient's circulation? A gentle massage. Very good. And what do we want to use when we're massaging? Lotion, which means what do we have to do before we put lotion on? And what do we do after? Wipe it off. And at the end of the skill, we're going to leave our patient in a clean gown. Doesn't matter when you change it. Doesn't matter. Leave them in a clean gown. Or, yeah, but for the test, our care plan tells us clean gown.
And so that's done on the mannequin, right?
Right. That is a mannequin skill. All right. So let's get into today's lessons. An hour and a half later. Transfer from bed to wheelchair. This is going to be on page 72 for you. Edward, do you have your score for chapter 7?
Yeah, I got 90.
Thank you. All right. So nothing new to learn. Nothing new to learn. We know all the principles that govern this skill. We do need to learn a few skill-specific things, particularly how to use a wheelchair. Now, wheelchairs vary by manufacturer, okay? Wheelchairs are a little different based on the manufacturer. So, wheelchairs are usually kept in a folded position like this for storage. Gets them a little bit smaller, gets them out of the way. In order to open a wheelchair, I'm trying to put this where the camera can see me. In order to open the wheelchair, there's no buttons to push or levers to pull or anything like that. It's all manual. So I'm going to lift the big wheels off the floor just a little bit so I don't have friction, so I'm not fighting friction, and pull the handles apart like that. Now, this one doesn't open all the way when I do that. That one over there does. That one's a little easier. But I'm going to show you on the harder one so I can show you. If the wheelchair does not open all the way, like this one, then we're going to press down on the bars to open it the rest of the way. But if you notice, my fingers are up out of the way.
Yeah.
You guys see that? Because if I keep my fingers down here, as this seat expands, it's going to go right up next to these side panels and my hands will get pinched. So and that's why I want to show you on this. So if you're going to press down on the seat bars, you want to keep your fingers up like this out of the way so you don't get pinched. Good? Okay. So let's get into wheelchairs. And I always forget to advance this. Our care plan is going to be on page 73. Care plan tells us to transfer the resident from bed to wheelchair. Resident is unable to walk or take steps, but can stand with support. Can stand with support. A gait belt or transfer belt is required to transfer the resident, and the resident will stay in the room. Remember that gait belts and transfer belts are the same thing. 2 words. Remember, everything in medicine has 2 names. Gait belt, transfer belt, same thing. It's a couple different kinds. The gait belt that we use in here is the one you're going to be using for the test. It's the canvas belt with a metal buckle. There are other types of belts. There's plastic belts with a plastic like backpack buckle on it. Your facility will train you on the belt that you have to work with. Okay. All right. So step-by-step instructions on page 73. Remember our shoe rules. If the patient's feet hit the floor, then we've got to talk about their shoes. This is going to be important for us because our patient starts out in bed. They're not going to have shoes on. That means you're going to have to physically put shoes on the patient. You can get them sitting on the side of the bed before you put their shoes on. That's okay. I don't like putting shoes on patients when they're laying in bed because now I've got all kinds of shoe dirt in the bed, right? So get them sitting up on the side of the bed and then put their shoes on just like you do at home. We want to make sure we have the shoes on before we transfer the patient. Don't wait until you get them into the wheelchair to get their shoes on. We need to have them on before we transfer them because slipper socks are not enough. Gait belts are applied around the patient's waist. We know this. We're going to check it with 4 fingers. We're going to verbally state that the patient's feet are flat on the floor before standing. Now, I do want to go over this real quick. When you go take the test, if you get this skill, and this skill is only on one of those 11 care plan sets, okay? So you only have a 1 in 11 chance of getting this skill. If you get this skill, this is a live patient skill. They are going to partner you up with somebody your body size or smaller to the extent possible. And they're going to try to find somebody who has slip-on shoes to make this a little bit quicker for you. Now, if they can't find somebody your body size or smaller with slip-on shoes, then you'll have to tie shoes. Okay. But they do try to make this a little bit easier for you. Not flip-flops. You have to have closed-toed shoes for the test. But let me just take a look around. Anybody have slip-on shoes that you don't have to tie?
These are just slip-on.
Okay. So you would be the patient, and I'm going to use you as my patient. I'm not going to use you because those have a heel on them.
It's actually a wedge, but
Yeah.
it's a small wedge.
Yeah. So we wouldn't use you for the test because any heel, if your shoe isn't flat, it increases your probability of falling, being off kilter. So I'll use you as my patient just a little bit. Because this is a live patient skill, I've got to have them, I need to include them as a partner. So what would I do before I stand the patient up? Right, I'm going to talk to them, tell them what I'm doing, and I'm going to count to 3. On the count of 3, we're going to stand up. But this care plan, if we go back and look at it, it tells us that we're going to transfer the patient from bed to wheelchair, that they cannot take steps. That means we have to do this as a pivot. So I don't want to be holding this patient up for a long time. I don't want to say, okay, 1, 2, 3, I lift them up, I turn them around. They have to be able to feel the seat behind them before I set them down. So I don't want to be holding them up saying, hey, can you feel the seat behind you before I lower you? So I'm going to prepare them beforehand. What I'm going to say is, I'm going to stand you up on the count of 3, spin you around. When you feel that seat behind you, I want you to say sit, and I'll help you sit. Okay? So put your hands on my shoulders. I'm going to lift up on the count of 3. We're going to swing around. Remember, when you feel the seat, you're going to say sit. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Up, swing, sit, sit. Okay? Knees not back, which is really hard on me right now. So we're going to make them a partner by counting. We're going to use that same oblique angle that we used for ambulate. 1 foot in front of their feet so they don't slide, 1 foot beside them at that corner of the box. And we're going to use our legs to lift, not our back. So we want to bend at the knees, not the hips. Before you sit the patient in the wheelchair, they have to be able to feel the seat. So I'm going to prepare them for that. And let's look at some skill-specific steps. This care plan tells us the patient is unable to walk or take steps. Guys, you need to highlight that or mark it some way, draw some attention to it. Your patient cannot take steps. I'm going to explain why this is so important in just a minute, but our care plan says our patient can't. So during the test, if your patient does, what do you think that does to your score? Yeah, because your care plan says your patient can't.
So if our patient takes a step,
It affects your score.
even if they do it on their own,
That's why we have to position the wheelchair so they don't have that option. We'll get there. Hold on.
that is so unfair.
Hold on. All right, so we're going to pivot the patient from the bed into the wheelchair. So do you see how far away this wheelchair is from our patient? If we stand that patient up, in order to get their bottom into that wheelchair, what are they going to have to do? They are, yeah. Now, your patient, whoever that is for the test, is going to do this unconsciously. They're not even going to be aware they did it. So if our patient stands up and has to take a step to get into that wheelchair, is it their fault?
No, it's ours.
No. So how could we avoid that? Pull the wheelchair closer. And when I say close,
It's close.
I mean close. That wheelchair has got to almost touch that patient, like less than an inch. That's how we prevent that from happening. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about brakes, wheelchair brakes. Different models have different brakes. It's usually push forward engages the brake, or pull back engages the brake. You'll be trained on the wheelchair that you are using for the test if you get this skill. So this one that I have in front of me, this wheelchair is a push forward to engage the brake. When I push this lever forward, see how the metal bar bites into the wheel? You can actually see it here. This one is that wheelchair over there, exact opposite. This one, you pull back to engage the brake. But hold on, let me disengage and move this forward so I can get in front of here. So if you look at this, these are the two surfaces that we're concerned about when it comes to brakes. This is what we call a manual brake. You can see that this bar right here is a fair distance away from the wheel. There's a gap there, which means the wheel can roll. This is unlocked. When we pull this lever back, see how the lever is off screen here? When we pull the lever back, what that does is it presses this bar into the wheel and now it can't roll. Good? Makes sense? It does not matter what this lever looks like. Forward, backward does not matter. What they're looking at is the bar pressing into the wheel? This is how they grade. Is that bar pressing into the wheel when the wheelchair should be locked? You guys understand that?
Right.
How that happens will depend on the wheelchair. Is that bar pressing into that wheel when it needs to be locked? Good? Good? Okay. So you can actually see that here. I was fighting this a few minutes ago. My wheelchair kept rolling on me. Floors are rarely level. Rarely level. They're not level in this room either. Floors are rarely level. In Florida, we build on sand. Concrete floors settle, they crack, which means that they're not level. Wooden floors warp. That means they're not level. When you put a patient into a wheelchair, if you leave it unlocked, that wheelchair is likely to roll somewhere. And the only way that's going to stop is whatever it runs into. When you put a patient into a wheelchair and it rolls, it will pick up momentum because of weight. This is important. One of the biggest checkpoints for this skill is if the wheelchair is not actively in motion, it must be locked. Make sense? If the wheelchair is not actively in motion, it must be locked. The largest, well, I think that the latest one that we had exceeded this, but before this year, one of the largest negligence verdicts in Florida occurred in 2000 after a death in 2004. The lawsuit was around 2007. A dementia patient was strapped into a wheelchair with a seatbelt. What would we call that? Dementia patient strapped into a wheelchair with a seatbelt. That dementia patient was able to access a doorway that led to a concrete staircase, and fell down the stairs and eventually died. This led to a multi-$100 million lawsuit. And I'm okay with that.
I'd be the family suing whoever did that to my family.
So let's talk about that for a second, right? So this patient wasn't at home. It's a dementia patient. They needed, whatever care, not at home. Normally, a family member would try to take care of them. But when the family members aren't able to take care of them, they put them into a facility, right? And the reason they put them into a facility is because they want their patient or their family member to get the best possible care that they can't provide. Around the clock care, monitoring. They want their family member safe, right? It's a whole reason they put them in a facility so that they're safe. They pay you guys to keep them safe. And yet this happens.
Did the wheelchair, do you know if the wheelchair like rolled towards the staircase or like if he put it, like if he took himself to the staircase?
I don't know the mechanics of this particular case. There's two big problems with this. Number one, he was restrained. Number two, the real brakes weren't on. That would be another one.
But it was unlocked.
But here's the real problem. Dementia unit.
Yeah, and no locked door. They're going down the stairwell.
Dementia unit. They did not keep him safe. He should never have been in that stairwell.
No.
Somebody left that door propped open or unlocked. Yeah.
So what does the fire marshal say about that, though? If it's a fire exit, how do you handle it?
That's not something you need to worry about. The
Okay.
facility has that covered.
Okay. That's
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. The facility has, there is a plan in place for all of that. Don't worry. And I can't give you that answer because it varies by facility.
That's okay. Just
Okay.
talk about it. Yep, I think too much.
So that's been handled by the facility.
Right.
The problem is that we don't want a dementia patient that doesn't have safety awareness
Yes.
to be in this position.
That's terrible.
You guys understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
If he was strapped in the wheelchair, he would have been able to get up.
Yeah. Or
Of course, he still could have gotten hurt, or he still could have gotten lost. But
he would have fallen out of the wheelchair versus being strapped into it, going for that whole ride.
Yeah, he might have fallen out sooner and not had done that.
he could have survived.
A lot of shoulda, woulda, couldas there. We don't know. But should he have ever been in that position to begin with? No. So when a wheelchair is not physically in motion, it must be locked. It's not a restraint. A locked wheelchair is not a restraint, guys. If somebody is able, mentally, physically able to propel themselves, they can unlock that wheelchair. The locks are right there within reach. They can unlock that wheelchair, go anywhere they want. It is not a restraint. But when somebody is physically unable or mentally unable to see to their own safety, the wheelchair must be locked. That is a safety concern. Okay? Able-bodied patients can release that brake and go anywhere they want to. But we have to have the brakes to keep our patients safe.
So if they're not able to unlock them by themselves, then wouldn't putting them in a wheelchair be considered a restraint?
No, because if they're unable to release that brake on their own, that means they're unable to stop a rolling wheelchair.
So if they're just going to go ahead.
Wheelchairs just for transfer. They should never be left in a wheelchair.
Well, some people prefer to be in a wheelchair to go and do. That's going to be dictated by higher people with, more education than us. We don't make those decisions. Okay. And there's a lot of varying pathways here. I don't want to get in those weeds. Those are not our decisions to make. The doctors and the nurses have worked together to create the care plan for this. So what do?
We follow it.
We follow that care plan. We don't need to understand what the patient's condition is, what their level of ability is, what their mental capacity is, whether a wheelchair is appropriate. That's not for us. For us, we need to know how to use the wheelchair appropriately when it's assigned.
And then if they're just gonna stay in their room like the care plan says, then we need to make sure when they're in it, it's locked.
Correct.
And and this is good for them to sit up because you always don't want to be laying in bed. So it's a nice option to sit in a wheelchair, and you could sit in a chair. But yeah, I see that.
Okay. We're going to do what our care plan tells us to do. I'm going to tell you that usually if we're putting somebody in a wheelchair, it means we're taking them somewhere. Okay. We're taking them to breakfast. We're taking them to activities. We're taking them to a doctor's appointment. I don't know. It doesn't matter. This scenario does not matter.
Right.
Usually, if they're going to stay in the room, they'll be in a chair at the side of the bed, but that's where this scene ends.
Right.
Remember that this scene is just a small segment of our patient's day. So the care plan says they'll stay in the room. Now, if you were going to stay in a room, would you want to be facing a blank wall?
No.
No. So what do you think is going to be an important part of this skill once we get our patient into the wheelchair, because it tells us they're going to stay in the room? What do you think is going to be important?
Asking if they want something like a remote or a magazine.
Okay.
Maybe positioned by the window so they watch the birds feed at the bird feeder outside the window.
Okay, so we don't want them facing the wall. We want to turn them so they're facing out and make sure they have the call light.
Right.
Yeah. Good. Okay. All right. So all wheelchairs should be locked when not actively in use. This is a written test question, guys. This is a written test question. All wheelchairs should be locked when not actively in motion. You can see this with these two chairs. You can also see it on the screen. You'll see that the wheelchair seat is significantly higher than a chair seat. Well, that kind of makes sense because the whole purpose of a wheelchair is to take somebody somewhere, and we don't want their feet flat on the floor if we're pushing them, right? So wheelchair seats being higher than regular chairs makes sense. The problem with that, and it is a problem, is because of circulation. So going down the backs of our legs, we have arteries and we have veins. And those arteries and veins right behind the knee are super close to the surface. Okay? Those arteries and veins are super close to the surface. So when we get into a wheelchair, this seat edge right here, because our feet aren't flat on the floor, that seat edge is going to press up into the backs of the knees because our feet are dangling. Well, what that does when the seat presses up into the backs of the knees, what that does is it traps blood and keeps it from being able to go back up to the heart. And that can lead to swelling of the lower extremities, but it also makes the blood slow down. When blood slows down or stops, anybody remember what it does? It clots. That's right. We talked about that with diabetes, with the constricted artery model that I showed you, right? So if we have a patient in a wheelchair with their legs dangling and the seat pressing up into the backs of the knees, what is our patient at risk of? Blood clots. Is that ever a good thing?
No.
In any universe? No. So when we put a patient into a wheelchair, it is super duper important that we remember to put their feet on the footrests, because this is what happens. When those veins get compressed, it's going to slow down the flow of blood, and that's what causes clotting. So we want to make sure that those feet are supported on foot pedals, and that relieves the pressure on the backs of the knees. Foot pedals are important. Good? Good? All right, so let me explain to you the difference between foot pedals and leg rests. I'm just going to put this here for a minute. Foot pedals and leg rests. So I know you guys at home, let me turn the camera so you can see. Okay, so there's a difference between foot pedals and leg rests. This metal tubing part has structure. This is a leg rest. And it actually clicks into place, and now it's locked. It doesn't move. Where this one is not clicked into place, it moves all over the place. So we bring it forward and it locks into place. Foot pedals just fold down when we're going to be supporting the feet, or they fold up. Okay. So foot pedals, leg rests, two separate pieces. Leg rests are locked right now. In order to unlock them, to move them out of the way, there's a little catch back here that I just release the catch and they move out of the way. Okay. So foot pedals fold up and down, leg rests swing to the side or lock in the forward position. There's 3 positions for wheelchairs, okay, that are open. This one at the top is when it's in use. Foot pedals down, leg rests forward, supporting the feet. They're not swinging freely, which can injure the patient. So they're locked forward, foot pedals down, supporting the feet when in use. This is when we're storing. When we're storing, those leg rests are still locked in the forward position, but the foot pedals are folded up so we can collapse that wheelchair. Okay. If we don't have those leg rests, if I just fold this wheelchair up and leave those leg rests, do you see how floppy those are? When I'm moving this wheelchair around, that leg rest, it's metal, can hit somebody as I go by them. You never want an uncontrolled metal object around patients. So if I'm going to transport this to storage, these leg rests need to be in this position. Foot pedals up, but leg rest locked. Good? Make sense? And then you have this. When we're putting patients into or taking patients out of the wheelchair, we need those leg rests out of the way. We don't want them in the way where our patient's legs can get all caught up in them. So to prepare this wheelchair for transfer, if I'm going to put somebody into it, I'm going to have the foot pedals up and I'm going to move the leg rests out of the way and then lock my wheelchair. And now I'm ready for transfer. Okay. You need to know this. You need to know this. In use, leg rest forward, foot pedals down. For storage, foot pedals up, but leg rest locked in place. For transfers, foot pedals up, leg rests retracted. Good? Okay. There was a lawsuit in Georgia over this. This was sad. It was sad because somebody was trying to do the right thing. There was a clerical person, like a registration person, and patient was there. She had gotten a CT scan or an x-ray or something, and her daughter went out to get the car. So her daughter pulls up to pick up her mom. Sounds good. They're waiting on a transport person to take this woman out to the car, and they were unavailable. So the clerical person thought, oh, no problem. I'll just help the patient out to the car. No big deal. Thought they were going to do a good deed. But this clerical person had not been trained on wheelchairs. So, and you would think, well, what kind of training do you need on wheelchairs, right? But here's the problem. When she tried to transfer, she got the patient into the wheelchair, took her to the car. When she tried to transfer her from the car to the wheelchair, she did not move those foot pedals or leg rests. Patient's feet got all tangled up in it. Patient fell and broke her leg. That resulted in a lawsuit. If we haven't been trained to do it, no matter how intuitive we think it might be, is it a task we should do? Okay. Good. So to do this skill, we're going to prepare the wheelchair by folding the foot pedals up, getting the leg rests out of the way. we're going to pivot the patient so they're sitting on the side of the bed. We'll put their shoes on. We'll make sure the feet are flat on the floor. We're going to put the gait belt on the patient, make sure it's snug enough with 4 fingers. We're going to bring the wheelchair close. And when I say close, I mean close. We're going to lock the wheelchair in place. We'll have them put their hands on our shoulders, grab the back of the gait belt, and on the count of 3, we're going to pick them up, pivot them, and sit them down, but they have to be able to feel the chair behind them before we sit. After we get them in place, we'll take the gait belt off, put the leg rests forward, foot pedals down to support the feet, make sure the wheelchair is locked facing away from the wall, and then do our closing. Good? Questions on that one? And this is just going through all of those steps. Do you see how close that wheelchair is?
Yeah.
That's how close we need to be.
And you have it a little bit of an angle.
Yes, it needs to be at a slight angle. Yep. Yep. We'll make sure that wheelchair is locked. We'll apply the gait belt, check it with 4 fingers. We're going to brace the patient's feet, standing at that oblique angle. We're going to use proper body mechanics, lift with our legs, not our back. We'll pivot the patient smoothly without them taking a step. Make sure they can feel the wheelchair behind them before sitting. Position their feet on the foot pedals. Lock the wheelchair. Make sure it's facing forward. Remove the gait belt, not sliding it against the skin. Ensure the patient is properly positioned in the wheelchair, and then do our closing. Good? Easy peasy.
Are we leaving the wheelchair locked or unlocked?
Always locked.
Okay, when we're done.
Always locked.
Okay.
Right. Always locked. Okay. So let me show you this one. Okay. Can I have you come over? I'm going to ask you to take your shoes off and put them on the floor by the side of the bed for me. Now, for the test, you're actually going to put the patient's shoes on them. In here, I'm going to have her help me out a little because I don't bend like I used to. Go ahead and lay down, please. I'm kind of having a hard time today. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Hi, Miss Jones.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good.
My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. Do you feel like getting out of bed and into the wheelchair?
Yes.
Awesome. Let me close your curtain. I'm going to go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. I have clean hands. All right.
For the real skills test, can we do that on the scale?
You're going to physically wash your hands during the first skill at the beginning and the end. You're going to the sink and physically washing your hands. After your first skill, the evaluators are going to tell you to simulate.
Okay.
When they tell you to simulate, that's exactly what you're going to do. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to bring this wheelchair close enough to grab, but not so close it's in my way because I got to get her sitting on the side of the bed. So if I get the wheelchair here, when I try to swing her legs around, what's going to happen? Yeah. So I want it close enough to grab so I don't have to step away from the patient, but not so close it's in my way. All right, Miss Jones, I'm going to help you sit on the side of the bed. Okay. Let me just move your shoes a little bit for me. Make sure the bed's in the lowest position. Make sure it's locked. Can you scoot your whole body toward me? Awesome. I'm going to do the work here. Okay. All I want you to do is relax. I'm going to put my arm all the way under her shoulders. Her furthest shoulder should be in my palm. This arm goes over her knees, not under. I'm not carrying her to a honeymoon. Over the knees. Okay. So under the shoulders and over the knees. And when I do this, it's a very smooth pivot. The most common mistake is people try to do this. Okay. Can you cross your arms over your chest for me? Oops. And just relax. I'm going to put my hand under here. Okay. And on the count of 3, we're going to turn. Just relax for me. 1, 2, 3. Good. She did not help me. You guys can pivot people. It's all about technique. Okay. Good. Are you dizzy?
No.
Are you comfortable? Okay. All right. So let's get your shoes on. Okay. Good. That worked well. Okay. Go ahead and slide your foot in. Oops. There we go. Are your feet flat on the floor? Good.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to bring this just a little bit closer. We're going to put this around your waist. This is going to help me get you into the wheelchair, okay? Again, make sure your gait belt is not twisted. We want to go through the first guard by the alligator teeth, and we're going to pull it snug just so we can fit 4 fingers. Lock it in. Get that out of the way. And now I'm going to bring that wheelchair close. And when I say close, I mean close. You guys see how close that is? And now I'm going to lock the wheelchair in place. Okay. I'm going to stand you up and turn you around to sit you in the wheelchair. When you feel that chair behind your legs, I want you to say sit for me. That way I know you know it's there, okay? So you're going to put your hands up here, 1 foot in front, 1 foot beside, her feet flat on the floor. Go ahead and put your hands up here. And on the count of 3, we're going to stand. When you feel that chair, say sit. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Sit. Very good. Let me go ahead and remove this. Can you lift your arm up for me? Thank you. All right. So I'm going to have you lift your feet off the floor and I'm going to spin you around, okay?
Okay.
So we're going to turn. Lock that. Oops. I'm going to lock the wheelchair. We're going to bring the leg rest forward. Lift her foot. Put the foot pedal down and support her foot. Over here, I'll make sure the wheelchair is locked. Bring the leg rest forward. Lift her foot up. Put the foot pedal down and put that there. Good?
Yes.
Are you comfortable?
Yes.
Okay. Call light's right here. Can you reach it? Awesome.
Thank
If you need anything at all, just hit the call light and let me know. Somebody will be down soon to take you to breakfast.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and open the curtain. We'll put the gait belt back where it goes. I'll wash my hands, think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and tell the evaluator my skill is done. Don't get up. Go ahead and lift your foot. I don't want you to fall. There you go. You're all set. Very good. All right. Any questions on that? Any questions on that?
So the patient can use their leg to feel for the chair instead of their hand?
Right. Yep. The backs of their knees. That's usually how we do it when we sit most of the time. Good. All right. Let's go ahead and take our break. Come back at 1/4 after. Okay, yeah, go ahead and grab it.
Sorry, I didn't get the confirmation. I'm in class, so I couldn't answer like all the prep break right now. So yeah, I can do that. Is how far from me?
Where's the actual stethoscope?
This is the blood pressure cuff.
So like by the mall. That's embassy. Yeah, I'll get it.
You wanted the kit that has the stethoscope in it? No, this is just the blood pressure cuff. Yeah, we do have a kit over there that has both.
I just can't do that.
If you want to take this back over there,
Yeah.
we can do this.
How are you?
That's all good. Look at your business exactly that. You go, girl. Healthy.
Not helping.
So take this over and tell them that you want to return this for the kit, the one that has both the blood pressure cuff and stethoscope. There you go. I'll be back in a few.
Yes.
My sister-in-law is a retired charge nurse in Denver, and every year she asks,
I can't sit behind a computer.
every year she asks me what I want, I think this is what I'm gonna start asking. The big two religion. When she started out, I just those were 50 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I'm going to nursing office, but I don't know, like, when they were trying to make my way out. If somebody asked me to be a charge nurse, I'm gonna be like, no, good, thanks.
Really, because they make the big bucks for doing not much.
I know, but they just sit there behind the computers
Here's
and
the
all
home
make
for
work.
80,000 a year. How's home?
I can't sit behind a computer. It's here for maybe 15 minutes.
Hey, Maria.
Good, how are you?
It's such a
I think I'm going outside for a little bit.
I'm going outside.
I got some movement.
Yeah, me too. I need some movement. Wake up.
really
A little snoozy, right?
for a CNA. Anything that says CNA Prometric, I'm applying.
Until I find the right one, I have to find a job that will allow me to work during the day for now until summer starts, and then overnights. When summer starts, I start getting the kids down. My 13-year-old, she's just not responsible enough to watch the 7 and 5-year-old at the same time.
Yeah,
And I can't pay for childcare.
that's why
I'm gonna pay some teenagers to go play on their phones.
that's why I am now. I'm a babysitter.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love kids.
I'm finding all the jobs like CNA are like $15, $17 an hour. Qualifications just starting out.
That's what I make now.
I make the most at least $20 starting.
That's what I'm like right now. $15 an hour.
You can make that in-home healthcare. 20 to 25 is the going rate. Care.com, that's what most of the caregivers are targeting.
Home health. I'm in home health. I'm working for a home health company. The most you make is $16 an hour on the week.
These are people working for Care.com. It's through a website. They're on their own.
That's how I found my babysitting job. You create your own profile and you can like apply to jobs, but people can also reach out to you and be like, hey, your profile is.
Care.com. The babysitting site?
Yeah, but it has more. It does dog sitting, home
That's
health aides.
caregivers too. The
Yeah.
lady that I was working for, that I did housekeeping for and food, she would hire her people who were on their own. Most of them were asking 20 to 25, especially with the gas rates.
So you can put your own like salary in there. You can put your hours. Like,
Wow. Let's go to Care.com for you. Pull up on your phone now. I'll show you. You can look at people now that are advertising on
you
your
create a
phone.
profile and it gives you suggestions of people who would work out for you. But
And then you can set your own hours. You're working for yourself. But you have to make sure you withhold your own social security.
your taxes.
You have to
yeah.
pay tax at the end of the year.
My boss does it for me.
It's not hard to do, honey. You
No, I know.
You can also
Talk to your tax commissioner, does your
I
taxes,
had
they'll help you
I
set
had a
up.
home daycare, so I did the 1099.
So then you know about it.
I do, it's just a pain.
I know. But with this, then you can set your own hours. And you can make good money. You can make more money than working for your agency.
Yeah, Yeah, no, I created my account and like put in my hours and like what I wanted for pay, and she reached out to me and she was like, "Hey, you look good for what I need. Would you come in for an interview?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." I've been working with her for almost 2 years now. And she's super nice. But they both work.
I think the last time I used care.com was when I was looking for a babysitter like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I wanted a night
I
away.
was a kid when that app was created.
Huh.
And it started off as a website.
So find care or apply to jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Don't you have to pay to use care.com though?
I think it depends on what you're asking for, like what you need from it. I paid to get my application set up and to find a job, and then I can't keep the subscription.
Find care for all you love. So what you like? What you're looking for a job person. You pick more than one. You don't let you pick more than one. What jobs you're looking for?
Maybe not. I was just looking for caregiver jobs, so.
I was rated $18 per hour. Probably not recognizing the business.
It's only supposed to rain all day. It's supposed to rain from 12 to 7.
Who needs care? I'm not trying to find care. I'm trying to look for care. So there's no like wide range or.
Did you click on to make an account?
Yeah,
For
well,
care?
it has me already in there from another, like, from 5 years ago.
Maybe you have to change something in your profile.
Would you hire that?
Sure.
I think so.
It has to be a posed picture or like a candid picture. I don't like selfies. Face or full body. Unless I have somebody with me, I don't like them.
I don't do pictures. I could look at my camera roll. I can guarantee you there's not one picture of myself.
I have a bunch.
I've been a member since January 2017. I've had no hires and no posts. How do you change your profile?
See if I can get into mine.
Yeah, it wants me to upgrade to do that. So.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. For some things you might have to pay. But you can cancel it as soon as you find a job.
Sorry, guys. Thank you.
I'll look at the question.
I haven't looked.
I should tell you, Patty, I transferred the circuit back here to the back because the background room is about out. So that was about out at that scene. So.
Okay,
That's what it
all right.
comes out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, yeah. You're welcome, dearest. It's like when you practice telling your RA what you need to tell them.
Okay. So let's send some good vibes out to Wallflower, taking the test on Friday.
Go Wallflower, you can do it.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
Miss Patty, are we still live?
Yes,
Okay.
we are still live.
We'll talk to you later.
I never do so. I don't
That's so sad with my husband. Because he's not a CNA. He doesn't know anything. He's trying to tell me what to do. And it was the first time that I reached a point I was like, I dropped and I don't wanted to do anything. Which usually I'm pretty cool and calm, but I was like so upset. Because I'm a textbook person. And I'm trying to follow a textbook. And my teacher's telling me, and he's like, has no qualification, it's nothing. Telling me, like, no, she did this and that. I was like, no.
Okay. We go to our setting boundaries.
All right. Yeah, we're a little crooked, guys. Sorry about that. I'll fix it later. Okay, so we are going to learn another skill. This is feeding a resident who's in a chair. There's not a whole lot to learn for this one. I mean, most of us know how to eat by this point, I would think. You know, don't overload the spoon, clearly. Don't feed too quickly. Give them time to chew and swallow. You know, we know how to do this. All right. So if you look at page 108, you can see all the principles involved. Of course, we're going to follow the care plan. We're going to do the opening. We'll evaluate if we need gloves. Now, there's a lot of questions on gloves on this, and I want to kind of address this real quick. You are on the other end of a spoon. You are not right up against their face. So unless you need gloves for some reason, you know, they're on isolation precautions, there's communicable disease, something like that. It's best not to wear gloves during this for two reasons. Number one, if you wear gloves, patients feel ostracized. They feel like they feel sick, basically. The other problem is that gloves give off an odor, particularly latex gloves. And latex is the odor is an appetite suppressant. So if you're wearing latex gloves while you're feeding somebody, you'll actually kill their appetite because a lot of our appetite is based on smell. So unless you need gloves, it's not a good idea to wear them. Okay. Does that make sense? We'll use a barrier, but in this case, the barrier is the food tray. So we're not going to use the chucks. The food tray is our barrier. Linen rules are going to apply. Don't let anything touch your uniform. And of course, the closing. This is a documentation skill. It's a live patient skill. So one of you may be a patient for this skill. And the person performing it will have 9 minutes to complete this skill. Now, when we get to the care plan at the top of page 109, it tells us to feed the resident a snack. You got 9 minutes to feed somebody a snack. I can pretty much eat a meal in 9 minutes. Okay. All right. The patient's unable to feed him or herself. The resident was sitting in a chair in an inappropriate position for eating. I want you to underline that. Inappropriate position. If the care plan is telling us they're in an inappropriate position, what do you think we need to do?
Reposition.
Yeah, make sure they're sitting upright. Now for the test, we can just ask them, can you please sit up straight? Nice, easy. In a clinical setting, if they're not, we may have to position them. But for the test, we can just ask them. Now, the reason this care plan says this, and it will not in a clinical setting. No care plan out there is going to tell you your patient's in an inappropriate position. The reason it does for the test is because this is done on a live person. And when you are the patient for this skill, you're going to get very specific instructions. So let's say that you're the patient. The evaluators are going to put you in a chair at a table just like this, and they're going to tell you to either slump or slouch. Okay. They're also going to tell you to only take 4 bites and then refuse anything further. 4 bites. So we're feeding somebody a snack, but how many bites are we giving them?
4.
4. And the spoon should only be half full. So should this really take 9 minutes?
No.
They give you way more time than you actually need. Okay. But the reason the care plan says inappropriate position is because her idea of slouching might be completely different from mine. Right? She might do something like this. Anybody ever see a 9-year-old eat?
They eat like that sometimes.
They eat like this. This does not look inappropriate, does it? And yet, our care plan is telling us what?
It's inappropriate.
It's inappropriate. So, it doesn't matter what your eyes are telling you. For the test, we have to ask our patient to sit up straight because our care plan said. Got it? Okay. All right. It also tells us to document the intake on the food and fluid intake form, and you can see the food and fluid intake form there on the side. Before we feed the patient, we want to offer them a hand wipe, because even though we're feeding them, their hand may travel up to their mouth to put something in or to wipe something away. We don't want dirty hands around a mouth while we're feeding. So we are going to offer them a hand wipe. Now, this skill is different from all the other skills we do in a variety of reasons. And I want to go over these one by one. First of all, we don't use a barrier because we have the food tray. That's what acts as a barrier. We are not going to close the privacy curtain for this skill, and that's because eating is social. People eat in groups. You tend to have conversations while you're eating. We don't want to close privacy curtain. That isolates the patient. It blocks them off from others, and it actually will affect their appetite. We found this out during COVID. Like, we always knew this, but this became a really big deal during COVID, because during COVID, first of all, we restricted all outsiders from coming in. No family could come in and visit. So we isolated our patients. And then we stopped letting our patients go to the dining room to eat. So everybody had to eat in their rooms. No socialization during COVID in long-term care facilities. Almost every single patient dropped weight. That's right. Socialization is an important part of eating. We have to remember that. Think about all the major milestones in your life: weddings, baby showers, funerals, birthday parties, graduations. All of those things generally revolve around what? Food. Absolutely. What's that?
If I want to lose weight, I should just exclude myself.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
go to a desert island, just or put gloves on.
Yeah. Yeah. Have gloves in your pocket. Absolutely. So we're not going to close privacy curtain. We also have to sit. Now, you can sit for other skills. You can sit for hand and nail care. You can sit for foot care. You can sit for other skills, but this one you have to. Not can, you have to. And that's because of the power dynamic at play here. When you stand over somebody to feed them, there is a power dynamic there. And patients feel way more inferior, but they also feel rushed. So you actually have to pull up a chair, have a seat, and more importantly, have a conversation. Every other skill we do, we tell them what we're doing. Okay, I'm lifting your arm above your head and back down to the bed, or I'm going to wash your face, or whatever it is, we're telling them what we're doing. We're not doing that with eating. We don't want to say, okay, I'm putting pudding on a spoon and I'm bringing it to your mouth, right? That's weird, awkward, demeaning. We don't do that. So for the test, for the test, we actually have to have a conversation. Doesn't have to be a real one. You can make one up, doesn't matter. But you have to have a conversation. So you can say something like, they're showing a movie on the big screen later. Would you like to go? They're playing bingo in the activity room. I think the jackpot's up to 210. And the Mildred says she's going to win. What do you think?
A good conversation starter is always asking how their day is going.
Sure, absolutely.
So many topics.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to tell you my favorite conversation starter.
Yeah.
I always have a couple questions that I have in my back pocket to ask patients. And you can look around their environment for clues too, because we display things that we're willing to talk about. I have a picture over there of myself and my husband in front of a cruise ship. What do you think I'm willing to talk about?
The cruise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm willing to talk about my trips, cruising, my husband. Those are not my skeletons in the closet. It's a picture. It's out there. So anything in your patient's environment is open for discussion. So look around. If you see a picture of them, you can ask about it. So that's the first thing I do, is scan their environment. Look for clues. What are things that they have out that they're willing to talk about? The second thing, if I don't have anything to talk about, is a question I always ask. And my question is, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? Now, that's a great question, because most people have been more than one place. So that gives you a couple of different areas to explore, right? But sometimes your patients will surprise you. The most exciting and interesting conversation I've ever had with somebody when I asked that question went like this. I was talking to a woman in her mid to late 90s. She was very with it. She was in an assisted living facility, and she had these horrible wounds on her legs. She had vascular insufficiency, really bad wounds on her legs, and the wound care was like 45 minutes of taking the old dressings off, cleaning, dressing the wounds, or cleaning and treating the wounds, and then redressing. It's a long process. So I know I'm going to be there a while. So I asked her the question I ask everybody. So, Miss Mildred, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? I'm thinking about going on a trip. I don't know where I want to go. She says, oh, honey, I've never been anywhere. Now, this is up in Citrus County. This was at an assisted living facility, little old Citrus County. And I said, oh, what do you mean you've never been anywhere? You know, like you've never been out of Florida? She says, no, I've never been out of the county. Whoa, 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 hold up. You're in your 90s and you've never been to Ocala? Like you've never been out of the county? And she says, well, that's not entirely true. I was born in Brooksville, but I don't remember that.
Well, you still went somewhere other than the county.
Oh my gosh. So I've got living history in front of me. Living history. What kind of changes do you think she saw in Citrus County in almost 100 years?
That's a change. It's embarrassing talking to her about that.
Oh, I stayed there for over 2 hours talking to her.
I believe it. Yeah, that's amazing.
She remembers when the first McDonald's came in. She remembers when the first car dealership was put in. She remembers when the courthouse moved and what a huge deal that was. There were 2 families in Inverness that were rivals, and the boy was supposed to marry the girl, and the girl ran off with another boy. And boy, did that cause a scandal. This is living history, guys. Living history. I found out things about Citrus County I didn't even know. Like I thought McDonald's was always there, you know. They actually had a parade. Now, we've had lots of places open lately. Anybody see a parade? So, I mean, these are things, changes in our society that have happened that we aren't even aware of. So, don't be afraid to talk to your patients, especially your older patients. Sometimes they don't think they have anything to contribute, and they might be the most interesting ones of all. I met a man that was knighted by the Queen of England. I met several people actually that were involved in the space operations. I met an engineer that was part of building the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, the first one before it was hit by the boat and collapsed. So your patients all have histories and stories, and they've all lived lives. And how horrible would it be to get to the end of your life and nobody care? So talk to your patients, and meal times is the best time to do that. The best time to do that. Have a conversation. So these things are graded on the exam. Don't pull the curtain. Have a seat and have a conversation. They're graded on the exam. So we want to make sure our patient is sitting upright. And for the test, we can just ask them, can you please please sit up?
Are you allowed, so like let's say you're close with like a patient. You know, you've already said them, like you're comfortable with conversation with them. Are you allowed to like go have lunch with one of your patients maybe?
Go by your facility policy. Go by your facility policy. It's always a good idea to maintain a professional boundary. Now, I am very approachable. I'm very nice, but there's still a professional boundary there that I'm not going to cross. I like you guys. I want to see you succeed. And when you graduate a week from today, if you decide to all go out to lunch afterward, you probably would invite me. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm so sorry. I'd love to come, but I'm not going to. Now, why do you think that is? That's right. I need to maintain that professional boundary. That's right. I am here to assist you. I am here to help you. I am here to be your instructor. I am not here to be your friend. And the reason for that is because at some point I may have to correct you. Now, if I've crossed that line, if I've blurred the roles, then you're going to take whatever I have to say in a totally different light. Does that make sense? This also applies to our patients. When you blur the lines, then it can get a little tricky for them to know where the balance is. Okay? So be careful to maintain, be nice, be approachable, be open, but be firm in your boundary. It will do your patient and you good because then there's no confusion.
So during the exam, we'll be talking to our patient, which is somebody that's also testing. Can we ask, like, oh, how's the exam going for you? Things like that, or should be more?
No, I would gear it more toward what you would have in a patient because the person playing the patient may be very nervous because they're testing. So they may not want to talk about how it's going. You know, it just kind of brings all that nerves up. So I would distract them. I would treat them like any other patient. And I would, you know, basically the one I would use for the test is, so they're showing a movie on the big screen. And that's what you'll see in the video in a minute. They're showing a movie on the big screen later. Do you want to go? I think it's like Casablanca or something. What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite movie? I don't know if I have a favorite movie. I've never seen Casablanca. Anybody here ever see Casablanca?
Boring.
Is it?
And black and white.
Yeah, it's black and white. I know, but I've never seen it. I'm more of a color movie girl. I like mysteries. I like solving problems. Yeah, I'm not a big love story person. Although I will say that Sweet Home Alabama was kind of cute. Yeah, kind of cute. So, you know, those are the types of conversations I would have for the test. Keep it generic. Okay. All right. So our skills specific steps here is we're going to make sure our patient is sitting fully upright. We'll offer them a hand wipe and a clothing protector. Let me say something about clothing protectors. We do not call them bibs. This is not a child. We call it a clothing protector. You can also call it a towel. That's fine too. Your patient may say, yes, I need me personally, I need a clothing protector. I wear everything I eat. Everything. My grandmother, not a chance.
She's a prim and proper.
She is a prim and proper person, and I am not a child. Yeah. So you offer me a clothing protector, I'm going to go, yep, I'll take it. You offer her a clothing protector, you're going to get a lecture. And that's fine. Patients can call anything they want, but we are going to remain professional. Okay. So we're going to offer a clothing protector. They can approve it or not. That's up to them. Up to them. We're going to sit while we feed them. We're going to feed slow. We're going to offer them a drink before they eat and every 2 or 3 bites as we feed them. Now, let me talk to you about drinks. This is something we don't stop and think about. Everybody has different eating preferences. Okay. My aunt used to drink a glass of water before she ate anything. She was a model at one time, and this is how she kept her figure. She would fill up on water, and then there wasn't much room for food. I've tried it. Doesn't work for me. But she would drink a glass of water before she ate anything. Okay. Now, my husband doesn't drink at all while he's eating. He just eats, and then he'll drink afterwards. Me, I like to drink a little bit along the way. Right? I'll take a couple bites. I'll take a couple drinks. I'll take a couple bites. I'll take a couple drinks. Everybody does this differently. And we don't really stop to think about that. So don't assume that the way that you handle food is the way your patient is going to handle food. So we want to ask, would you like a drink before we get started? And then after a couple of bites, we're going to ask, would you like a drink? We're going to offer that every 2 or 3 bites. Make sense? Good. Now that also goes for how we're feeding the patient. Just like everybody has fluid preferences, everybody has eating preferences too. Some people don't like their foods to touch on the plate. Do I have anybody in here like that? Okay. Some people like their corn and mashed potatoes mixed. Some people do not. And they're very strong in that feeling. Some people like to eat all of one thing before they move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's my husband.
Yep. Okay. Absolutely. Some people like to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and kind of move around the plate, right? Some people eat their salad before a meal. Very common in America. Some people eat their salad at the end of the meal, which is actually common in Europe.
Or you eat with your meal.
Or with the meal. Yes. So the way that you eat is not necessarily the way your patient eats. So when we're feeding patients, we want to find out, what do you want first? What do you want next? We're going to be their hands, but to the extent possible, we're going to let them direct us. But let me talk to you about pureed. We talked about pureed foods a little bit earlier in the program, but let me go over this a little bit more in detail. Do you remember I said pureeing alters the texture but not the taste? You guys remember that? Okay. Let me tell you a story about this. I was a hospice nurse, went into a local nursing home to see a patient. She had had a stroke, was nonverbal, had cancer, end stage. She couldn't speak, but she had she's still very with it, very, very obvious facial expression. She talked with her face, okay? So I go in to see her. It's lunchtime, go down to the dining room. And, hey, Mary, it's Patty, your nurse. How you doing today? And she kind of rolled her eyes at me. And I said, oh, that good, huh? And I looked at the plate. I said, what's for lunch today? Now I look at the plate, and it's a big plate of gray goop. Like, what is that? And she just kind of turned her head, and you could tell she did not want that, right? She's very expressive. So I asked the CNA that was sitting there feeding the patients. I said, what's for lunch today? She says, Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets. I said, ugh. And I said, okay, but what's that? Right? Pointing to the gray stuff. She said, Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets. I said, would you eat beets and Salisbury steak mixed together? And she says, no, that's disgusting. And she says, oh, no. That it's pureed. It has no taste. And I said, oh, no, pureed has all the taste, just none of the texture. And she said, are you serious?
You literally just put the food in a blender and you blend it.
Yeah.
What do you think happens to a smoothie when you put the fruit in the blender and you blend it? It still has taste.
It does.
Yeah. So I made her go get another tray, and Mary was much happier and did not eat the beets. So we have to be careful about our assumptions, right? Because sometimes things that we think aren't necessarily right. And when we're helping somebody and we bring these false assumptions in, it can affect them. So be careful with that. Okay. All right. So we're going to offer a drink before feeding, and every 2 or 3 bites, we're going to offer small bites. In fact, the spoon should be less than half full, and we should give them time to chew and swallow. Now, this is another testing experience that an evaluator told me about. CNA, when you go take the test and you are the patient for this, what you're going to be fed is a small cup of applesauce, the little individual cups of applesauce, or a small thing of pudding. Those are the 2 things that they use, pudding or applesauce. So it's just a very small container. So the CNA is feeding the person being the patient, and overloading the spoon just as much as she can get on that spoon, shoving it in the mouth and doing it just like this. And this person, no time to chew and swallow, this person that was playing the patient didn't know what to do. So she kept opening her mouth and stuff kept falling out. And she thought she was going to choke. And she's, looking in panic at the evaluator, help, help, help. And she got that entire thing of pudding into the woman's mouth, the person playing the patient, before the evaluator's like, stop, before the evaluator even had time to say stop. So we have to be careful here. I know you're nervous, but do you think that person should have passed the test? No, because it was a safety stop. Yeah. But they couldn't understand why. Because in their mind, they did the points right. They sat down. They asked the patient what they wanted.
They didn't humanize it.
Exactly. They were nervous. They paid more attention to themselves rather than the patient. All you had to do was open your eyes and look and see the chocolate pudding dripping off of this patient to realize that something might be going horribly wrong here, right? Don't forget to look at the patient during the test.
Are we graded as the patient in the test?
No, you're actually not graded as the patient. You will get a script to follow. And if you go off script, the evaluator will probably reprimand you a little bit, to keep you on script.
So the only time that the patient is graded is when you do the transfer to the wheelchair if they take a step.
Right. But again, you're going off script because the script is going to tell you do not take a step.
But it's not your fault that person puts the wheelchair too far away. You have to take a step.
Right. You're going to fall. Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Right, because they're grading you based off of how you take care of your patient. So if you did that in the real world and the person was immobile
and unable to take a step, they're going to fall.
They're just gonna fall.
Yeah.
You can refuse as the patient in the skill test. You can refuse to do.
The evaluator will not let it get to that point.
Because that will happen.
They will absolutely. They will absolutely let you go as far as possible to let you correct it on your own. But once you're physically putting somebody else in danger, they have to stop. So, and that's what happened in that particular case is that evaluator, by the time, because it was happening so fast, by the time the evaluator's like, stop, and the woman just keeps shoving stuff in. So, and then she had to get forceful about it, and once the evaluator stops, that's an automatic fail. A safety stop is an automatic fail. Because if you're doing it in the test, you're certainly going to do that in a clinical setting when things are real. And you think you're nervous on the test, guys? That's nothing. Nothing. You're going to be way more nervous in a clinical setting when your families are watching you, when the doctors are at the door waiting for you to get done so they can do their exams, when you've got way more patients to care for than you have time to take care of, and you're feeling rushed, when the patients are watching your every move, right? You think the evaluators are stressful? Guys, it is way worse when you get out there in the field. So if you're freaking out during the test, this may not be the right field, right? Remember, the test is the first time you're watched, not the last. And those family members will judge you way harsher than the evaluators will. Way harsher. Does that make sense? Good. All right. So we're going to have a conversation, encourage the patient to eat. At the end of the skill, after the patient's taken 4 bites, they're going to say, I'm done, I'm finished, I don't want any more, I'm full. Whatever they say, they're just going to stop, right? And they're going to tell you, I'm done. Well, you need to encourage them at least 2 ways. At least 2 ways. I'm going to give you 3. You need to pick 2. First thing I do is ask, are you sure you don't want just one more bite? Because you can always get further with patients by being nice. So maybe they think they're doing me a favor by stopping eating because other people need my help. I don't want that. I want them to eat. So are you sure you don't want just one more bite? It's really important that you not make them feel rushed. The second thing that I'm going to ask, we're under a tornado watch, guys. Not a warning, just watch. Weather's about to get bad. The second thing I'm going to ask is, would you like something else? Now, we've all had those days. You think you're hungry, you get something, you take a bite, and you're like, nope, not it. Not it. Happened to me last week. I thought I wanted mac and cheese. I made mac and cheese. I took a bite, and it's like, no, it's not what I wanted. Not what I wanted. We have all had those days. So maybe your patient's having that day. They took a couple bites, and they're like, nah, it's not it. So I'm going to ask, can I get you something else? The third thing I'm going to do is tell them there's food available later if you get hungry. You need to use at least 2 of those. I don't care which 2, but use at least 2. Are you sure you don't want just one more bite? Is there something else I can get for you? And there's food available later if you get hungry. What that does is it tells the patient that we are invested in their eating, that we are concerned about their nutrition and well-being, that we're not rushing them. Make sense? Okay. And then at the end, we're going to leave the area around their mouth clean and document. So when I say feed slowly, spoon only half full, this is what I mean. Okay. Like a baby. We aren't going to use childlike feeding techniques. No planes, trains, or automobiles. Now, I will tell you, there are some patients that I feel like I can get away with this with and play with a little bit. But for the most part, I'm going to keep it professional. Okay. And I'm certainly not doing that to my grandmother. Oh, my Lanta. Okay. So we're going to have a conversation. We're going to encourage the intake. We're going to leave the area around the mouth clean, and we're going to do our closing. At the end, we're going to document this on a food and fluid intake form. When you look at this form, you're going to see meal and snack. Which one are we feeding? Snacks. Our patient only took 4 half-spoonful bites. How much do you think they ate based on a quarter percentage scale? 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100%? 25. Right. We're going to estimate the fluid the same way. They may refuse. They may not have a drink at all. That's 0. They may just take 1 sip. That's about a quarter. They may drink half of the cup. They may drink most of it, which is 75. They might drain that cup because they're testing and their throat is a little dry and they're a little nervous, and they may drink the entire cup, which would be 100%. Okay, good. So that leads us to percentages. So remember, in this case, details matter. We're going to offer a hand wipe, offer a clothing protector, offer a drink before feeding every 2 to 3 bites. Let them lead, feed slow, and no childlike feeding techniques. This is our quarter scale. We have to talk about this a little bit before I show you this skill. So 100% means Clean Plate Club. My husband is always a member of the Clean Plate Club. I am never a member of the Clean Plate Club. That's just the way I am. I never eat everything on my plate, which frustrates him, but it's another story. So if I were collecting his tray, he would eat 100%. Mine's probably going to be closer to 75. Okay. If I just picked at it and really didn't eat a whole lot, it might be 25%. So everything that we document for feeding is going to be based on this scale. So if you look at this, if we started out with a sandwich, some broccoli, and some Jell-O, and we go pick up the tray and we see that first one, that's what's left on the tray, how much, let me stand up here, how much would you estimate that the patient ate if this is what's left? 25%. What about this one?
50.
I'd say probably 50. About half of that broccoli's gone, about half of the sandwich. So probably close to 50. This would be 75%. What do you think that one is? 100. Even though like 2 pieces of Jell-O and a broccoli, it's closer to 100 than it is to 75. Okay, good. Now this is an estimate. If you're off a little bit, it's not precise. Okay. It's not a precise measurement. But what we're looking at here is what is our patient's appetite like over a long term? If our patient keeps refusing meals and eating zero, that's a big deal. Who do you think we should tell if we notice that? Yeah, the nurse. If the patient is doing this, just taking a bite or two each meal, what do you think we should do? Tell the nurse, right? A half of each meal, I still would tell the nurse because they're not getting complete nutrition. And if our patient is diabetic, we're giving them medications based on them eating 100%. So you need to let the nurse know. Okay. But they may just have a small appetite as well.
But wouldn't be the nurse checking all the documentation of the amount of eating?
Ideally, yes. Ideally. But you're going to notice it before your nurse has a chance to check. So if you notice something, what should you do? Yeah, let the nurse know. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now let's talk about fluid intake. And all of this, I actually have a worksheet for you on this, and it's
That question came up on our test.
Yeah, it did.
which test?
1 ounce is how many cc's?
Oh yeah, yep. Let me get to. Okay, so if you go to page 106, there is a feeding documentation worksheet there for you. Feeding documentation worksheet. 1 ounce equals 30 cc's. So when you go to work, wherever you go to work, part of your orientation, they're going to tell you how many ounces or cc's their cups are. Their coffee cups, their water cups, all of that. You need to pay attention to that because every facility's cup is a little bit different. Some are 4 ounce cups, some are 6 ounce cups, some are 8 ounce cups. You need to know what you're working with there. Because when we go to document, we're going to have to convert those ounces into cc's. So if we have an 8 ounce cup, we multiply 8 ounces by 30, and that gives us 240. If we have a 6 ounce coffee cup, we're going to multiply the 6 ounces by 30 and gives us 180 cc's. Now, at the end of the shift, for some patients, we're going to have to keep track of everything that they take in, and we add it up at the end of the shift. And this is total intake. We would also measure everything that comes out of the patient, urine, blood, whatever. And we're going to document that as output. And in an ideal world, intake and output should be roughly equivalent. 100 cc's off, okay. 200 cc's off, a problem. Okay, so roughly equivalent. So if the patient took in 700 cc's of fluid that shift, but they only peed out 100 cc's, well, where did the other 600 cc's go? They're retaining it somewhere. Yep. That's a problem. Very good. So we need to know how to do this conversion. You will have a math question on the state exam. So if you look at page 106, at the bottom of the second column, you'll see a cup, a milk carton, and a coffee cup. The milk carton actually tells you how many mLs there. mLs and cc's, same thing. Two names, same thing. mL, cc, same thing. So you can see it says 240 mLs. So we don't have to do the conversion. The carton tells us. So if you look at that water bottle in front of you, what's your name again? Jessica. Look at the water bottle in front of you. Look at the label on the water bottle. It should be 15.9 ounces. Is that right?
16.9.
16.9. How many mLs?
500.
500. So the bottle tells us. So we would document 500 mLs. Okay. Good. So do that activity really quick. The cup, the milk carton, and the coffee cup. Do the conversion. Just those three. And this is something you might have on the state exam.
Raise your hand when we're doing it.
It's okay. And then after you get that conversion done, at the bottom, it's going to ask you what the total intake was for this shift. So the first one is what, 6 ounces? So 6 times 30 is 180. Your milk carton is 240. And 12 ounces of coffee, which is a whole lot of coffee, 12 ounces of coffee would be 360. So if you add together 180 plus 240 plus 360, you get 780. Correct. So that would be the total intake. So you will have one of those two questions on the state exam, either a conversion question or an addition question. Okay. Good. So this is your the page we were just looking at. We also talked about this. Remember I said that we would be going over this later in the program. I jumped ahead on Monday. So NPO, what does NPO mean? Nothing by mouth. Very good. And page 169 has your documentation forms for you if you want to play with them. I also have a whole lesson on page 107 that you probably want to go over. It's intake and output. It's basically everything I just talked about. That everything, we measure everything that goes into a patient and out of a patient if they're on intake and output measurements. And then if there's a discrepancy, you need to let the nurse know. So let me show you this video because I don't have anything to feed you.
When you say output or output, like urine as fecal
For CNAs, it's going to be urine unless it's liquid feces. And in that case, we most likely would measure it, but go by your care plan. Okay. But not solid. We don't measure solid. No. The nurse will also look at wound drainage, wound irrigation, emesis, which is vomit. So the nurse is going to also be doing intake and output because they're going to measure how much IV fluid went in, how much irrigation solution, tube feedings, all of that. So you and the nurse will both be documenting on the intake and output. They'll keep track of the nursing stuff. You'll keep track of the ADL stuff. Okay? But all of it counts. Okay, let me show you this video.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. Would you like a snack?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Can I ask you to sit up straight for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jones, let me get you a hand wipe so that you can wipe your hands. Would you like to take that? Thank you very much. Let me dispose of this. Okay, can I offer you a clothing protector?
Yes, please.
I'll just place this on your chest. Okay, it looks like we have pudding. How does that sound?
Great.
Very good. Can I offer you a drink before we get started?
Please. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
There you go. Do you have any plans for this afternoon?
No, I do not.
They're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room. Would you like me to get more information on that for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. How does the pudding taste?
Delicious.
Very good. Ready for another?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can I offer you a drink? Would you like something to drink?
Yes, please.
All right. Ready for another bite?
Yes, please.
Ready for another bite?
I'm actually full.
Are you sure you wouldn't like just one more bite?
I'm okay, thank you.
Can I get you something else from the kitchen?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let me know if you get hungry later, and we'll get something to eat. We do have food available on the unit.
Thank you.
Going to take the napkin. There we go. I'll remove this clothing protector from you, and we're going to put this in dirty linen. I'm going to go take care of your tray. I'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to place the tray back on your table. Is there anything else I can get for you? A magazine, perhaps?
No, thank you.
Your call light is within reach. Please let me know if you should need anything. I'm going to go wash my hands and document.
Okay, thank you.
After washing my hands, I'm going to document the amount of food that this patient ate. Using my documentation form, I'll review the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and tell the evaluator my skill is done.
Do you have to wash that tray that the pudding was on that?
Not for the test, because in a clinical setting, it's gonna go back to,
Oh, right, to the kitchen.
the kitchen.
Okay.
So I want to talk about this really quick. This is a comment. It's in Spanish. I'm going to translate it for you.
Oh, I was gonna say.
It's basically saying, I'm not going to lie. You know, when you first start learning, it looks good. You know, everything that I'm teaching you looks really good, right? But when you get out into the workforce and you start working, it doesn't look like this. And unfortunately, she says you're going to regret it. And that makes me a little bit sad. And I'm sorry that she regrets her choices. But there is a little bit of truth to this. And that's why I wanted to display it. There is a little bit of truth to this because I'm teaching you the right way. Now, how many of you have ever had a job? Is everything always done the right way?
No.
And that's in any industry, right? So we can't expect that healthcare is any different, right? There's people out there that are taking shortcuts, that are not doing things properly. And that's every industry. And yes, unfortunately, it's pretty prevalent in healthcare as well. So my goal is that you don't regret going into healthcare. My goal is that you understand the reason behind all of the steps that I show you. Guys, it'd be way easier for me if I just threw that video on and said, okay, this is how you feed people. That's it. Skip that whole lecture, right? That would have been easier for me. A whole lot less words, right? I take the time to give you this information, the background behind it, so that you understand why each one of these steps is important. So when you're out there, you're less likely to cut corners. So yeah, the industry is not what we want it to be, but how are we ever going to get it where we want it to be if nobody is doing the right things? If we use it as an excuse. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I teach you the way I teach you because I want you to make this a priority and not just do what everybody else is doing. And that's how we're going to improve healthcare. If we sit around and wait for somebody else to do it, it's never going to get done.
Sounds like that person is not happy with it.
That's why I said that really kind of makes me sad that they kind of regret, according to the thing, they regret. It really kind of makes me a little bit sad. Maybe they didn't have an instructor that was able to light a fire to get them to see it a little bit differently. But welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Hopefully you'll get that here. Okay. But yeah, there is some truth to that. And that's why I did want to display that. There is some truth to that. The way I show you is not necessarily the way you're going to see it done out there. But all change has to start with someone.
It has to start with them.
Yep. Okay. All right. So, page 152, we're going to learn about peri-care. This has a lot of principles. In fact, most of the principles are going to be used in this skill. We're going to follow the care plan. We'll do our opening. We're going to wear gloves. We need a barrier. Patients can be uncovered and undressed. We need a privacy blanket. Linen rules apply. Patient has to be in the middle of the bed, so scoot and roll. It's a washing skill. We're going to clean the basin the same way, and we do our closing. So almost every single principle is used in this skill. This is one that's a little bit hard for students, not because the skill is hard. The skill is actually pretty easy. It's hard for students because your emotional reaction to what you're washing. This is all about you, not them. Patients that are having peri-care done means they can't do it for themselves. Trust me. This is personal care below the waist. You aren't letting anybody do that unless you absolutely can't do it yourself. If you can do it, you will. Make sense? You don't want anybody in that area unless they have to be. Okay? So understand if we're doing this, that means our patient needs our help. They may not want it, but they need it, and they understand that. You are not the first person to do peri-care on a patient. If you are the first person, that means it's new. It's a new skill for them. It's sudden. Does that make sense? Who do you think the first person to do peri-care on a patient is going to have to be? The nurse. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you're not the first person to be there. In fact, your patients probably had peri-care done so often they could teach you how to do it. So you are going to be all nervous about this skill, and your patient's going to be like, come on, I got bingo, let's go. Okay?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're like that, then it would make me feel much more comfortable.
Absolutely.
They're staring at me while I clean their private parts.
So we want to make this as comfortable for the patient as possible, right? One of the ways, you got to think about your approach here, all right? If I got to go in and do peri-care, let's say I'm doing peri-care on that lady over there, and this is a mannequin skill, by the way. I'm going to do peri-care on that lady over there. If I walk in and I go, yeah, I got to, do the... If I go in there, do you think they're going to have any confidence in me whatsoever? No. They're going to throw me out of the room. If I go in and I say, hey, Mrs. McGillicuddy, I'm Patty, your CNA today, and I need to do peri-care, is that okay? Just like I did with foot care, just like I did with feeding, just like I did with transfer, just like I did with everything else, are they going to have more confidence? So your approach is going to matter here, especially with this skill. First couple times you do it, you'll be all nervous, and I get that, but try not to let them know. Okay, good. Your approach is going to count here. It's not a hard skill. We know. Everything here, you know. You know. You also know how to use the leaves method. We learned that with partial bed bath. Nothing new to learn there either. So there's not much about this skill that you have to learn. But I do want to spend some time talking about the urinary system so that you know what incontinence is. So you can understand what's happening here. Okay? So these are your step-by-step instructions on page 153. Your supplies are located below. Yes, you need to learn your supplies. And our care plan at the top says the female patient has been incontinent of urine and needs perineal care. The pad under the resident is wet, but the hospital gown and bedding is dry. That's a fairy tale.
Right?
That does not ever happen. But for the test, we're going to take the gift they give us. Okay? We're going to take the gift they give us. This is a mannequin skill. She hasn't really wet. The pad is not going to be wet. Okay? We're kind of pretending a little bit. But all we have to do is clean the resident and change the pad. That's it. That's it. And we already know how to do that. You don't know that you know, but you know how to do this. I'm going to show you that you know based on what we've learned previously. Well, let's talk a little bit about the urinary system, okay? So 5th grade review, I'm not going into any depth of this. 5th grade review. You have 2 kidneys. Those kidneys filter blood 24 hours a day. They never stop. They never take a break. Kidneys work 24 hours a day. Every time your heart beats, it pushes some blood to the kidneys to filter that blood and then pushes it out. Okay? So kidneys work 24 hours a day. They filter your blood, they remove waste products and create urine out of it. Those urine drops, and they really are drops, drip, drip, drip down 2 tubes called ureters. That takes those drips into the bladder. Your bladder is a Ziploc bag. It just holds urine. That's it. All your bladder does. It's actually kind of a stupid organ. Doesn't think at all. Just holds. But the way that it holds is with this valve right down here. There's a little valve at the bottom of your bladder that is closed. And just like a Ziploc top, as long as it's closed, nothing's going to leak out. When you go to the bathroom, that's what opens. And then whatever's in here goes out. You get done peeing, that valve closes, and now you're ready to go for a few more hours. Good? Everybody understand this concept? How often do the kidneys work?
24 hours.
It's important. I'm going to get there. It's important that you remember that. Okay? Now, when we are incontinent, what has changed here is not what you think. Kidneys still work. They still filter blood. How often? 24/7. Those drips still go down the same tubes, ureters. They still go into the bladder. What is broken here is the valve. We have a leaky bag. That's it. That's what incontinence is. But how often did I say those kidneys work? So since there's nothing to keep that urine in the bladder, it's going to come out as it's produced. So your incontinent patient is going to be wet, 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 wet all the time. As these drips go through the bladder, out through the valve that's not working, and out of the body. So your incontinent patient will be wet all the time. If you have a patient who is dry, 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 really, really wet, that system is working. That valve is working. That tells me that my CNAs are not getting my patient to the bathroom. That is incompetent staff, not incontinent patient. You guys got that? So here's why you need to know this. Because you are going to have coworkers wherever you go to work. And you are going to have some lazy coworkers wherever you go to work. And you will hear some of your lazy coworkers say, yeah, I checked him. He's dry. Is an incontinent patient ever dry?
No.
So what does that tell you about your coworker? They lied. You guys understand that? Incontinent patients are always wet. Now, there's a problem with that, though. A really, really big problem with that. Adults are not babies. Babies, their urine, very mild. Very mild. Because our urine acidity is based on what we eat. Babies eat formula, breast milk, pureed plums, right? Very, very little acid. Their urine, very mild. You can put a diaper on a baby, put them to bed, wake up 8 hours later. They still have skin on their tushes because the urine is mild, not very acidic. Now, adults, almost everything we eat and drink is acidic. That acid is going to be excreted through our urine. That's how we maintain our acid balance actually in the body, is primarily through the urine, also through breathing a little bit, but through urine. So, baby, we can put a diaper on, leave them 8 hours, they're fine. Adult, you put a diaper on them, leave them 8 hours, and they are not going to have skin on that tush. You guys understand the difference? Okay. We don't call them diapers with adults. We call them adult briefs. You will also hear them called depends. Usually, patients will call the ones that pull up depends, and the ones that fasten like this a brief. Okay. But we'll use, the right terminology. We're going to call them adult briefs. Remember, patients can call anything they want. We're going to remain professional. Now, the problem with these things, our patients wet all the time, right? And when they're out of bed, putting an adult brief on, good, because nobody wants to be wet. Nobody wants to pee their pants, right? It's embarrassing. So adult briefs, when they're up and out of bed, good, maintains dignity. But that's going to hold the urine right up next to the skin. So we're holding acid right up next to the skin. We're blocking out light. We now have warm, dark, moist. What grows there? Yeah, absolutely. So we are setting this patient up for all kinds of skin issues, infections, urinary tract infections, fungal infections, all kinds of stuff. So this, while they're out of bed, okay, we're still going to change them every 2 hours around the clock. Clean that skin off. Get a new brief on them every 2 hours around the clock. We're waking them up at 2 a.m., people. We're waking them up at 2 a.m. to change them. Don't do them a favor and let them sleep through the night. Because when you wake them up the next morning, they're not going to have any skin left. We clean them every 2 hours around the clock. All right? But when they're in bed, there's a better way. If they're in bed and they agree to it, leaving them open to air is much healthier for the skin. Open to air means they are not wearing undergarments. They're placed on an absorbent pad, chucks, that's going to pull the urine away from the skin. So it also allows light and air to circulate. So we end up with fewer skin issues, fewer infections. So when we're in bed, open to air on a pad is best. It's not best for everybody. Some people need the security of undergarments. That's okay. That's not for us to decide. Who's going to decide that? The patient, and that's going to be reflected on the care plan. Got it? Our care plan told us to change the pad, but it says the gown was dry. Okay. So this is our scenario for the test. Patient is open to air on a pad. Now let's think about that pad for just a second. That pad, when urine comes out, urine is right here, right? It's in our furnace area. What's our body temperature? Okay, so 98.6. Urine's a little warmer because it's up in our furnace area. So when urine comes out, it's about 100, 101 degrees. So warm urine, okay? As soon as that warm urine hits the pad, it's going to hit room air. What do we know about room air? Room temperature always wins. So what's going to happen to that temperature? It's going to get cold. What is that going to feel like for the patient? Oh, uncomfortable, cold, wet, slimy, icky. So if we got a patient on a pad, open air, what do you think the first thing they want done is? Change that pad. Absolutely. So we're going to put a new pad under them to get them comfortable. Make sense? But now we got a wet butt on a clean pad. So at the end of the skill, we're going to change that pad again to have a clean butt on a clean pad for the next 2 hours. Okay, good? Make sense? Washing rules apply here. We don't add soap to the basin. We use a paper towel, turn the water on. We're going to check it. It should feel warm. Patient's going to check it. We're going to use that leaves method. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. Don't get our surface wet. And we're not going to use lotion. So ignore that. All right. I'm not going to go through all these. Hold on. We are going to use the leaves method for this skill. It's a wet body opening. So we're going to use the leaves method. And for this skill, we're going to use 5 leaves. Oh, let me go. Yes.
When checking a patient that's maybe not incontinence, but like you're checking them every 2 hours.
Yep.
Gloves go on before you check for wetness, correct?
Right. Yes. Because anytime we have exposure to body fluids. Yep. Now we're going to change that chucks, clean rolls toward, dirty rolls away. Okay. So that's how we're going to change chucks. And when we roll the blanket, we're going to do it in a very specific way. So we're going to put a privacy blanket on this patient. Okay. And we know we have to expose the peri area. There's a big difference between exposing a small space and exposing everything below the breast. Big difference in how your patient's going to react to that. So when we are on the side of the bed and we put the privacy blanket on and we are ready to expose the patient, we're going to roll that blanket up underneath. And when we do that, we're going to grab the gown. So the gown and the blanket are going to roll together up to the waist. And then I'm going to put a towel on the legs. So the only area that's exposed is the area that I need to work on. Do you guys understand how that's different? Let me show you. Let me give you an example because a visual here goes a long way. So I want you to imagine for a second that you are the patient. Move this out of the way. Okay. So if we have a privacy blanket, let me just grab this one. I have a privacy blanket, and let's pretend I have gloves on. I'm just demonstrating this one thing for you real quick. Let's say I have a privacy blanket, and I'm putting it on the patient. Okay, remember, we're not going to snap it or shake it. I'm just going to lay it over the patient. I'm going to pull that sheet down underneath the privacy blanket, just to about their knees. I don't have to go any further than that. Now, I'm ready to actually start the cleaning. So I've got to expose her to do that. I would have gloves on. I'm going to take this blanket here, and I'm going to grab the gown with the blanket. You guys see how I did that? Grab the gown. There's the gown. I'm going to grab the gown with the blanket, and I'm going to roll it underneath to expose my patient. Then I'm going to take a towel, and I'm going to lay it over the legs. So the only area that's exposed is the peri area. This is professional. Now, if you were the patient laying here for a second, how would you feel? Do you see the difference there in how your patient is going to react to this? Everybody is uncomfortable. You guys are all uncomfortable with this. I can see it in your faces. Please cover her back up. You're uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, how do you think this patient feels? Okay. So the way that we do this to minimize exposure is to roll the gown up in the blanket and then place the towel over the legs. Do you guys see how that's way different? Okay. Now, at the end of the skill, I'm all done. I take the towel away. Now, I unroll that blanket, and it actually pulls that gown down, and I don't have to touch it with my dirty gloves. Okay. Does that make sense to you? Do you guys understand why? That's the big deal here.
And that will be done after we already removed the dirty bed.
Yes. After you've changed the pad once,
And then we'll change it again.
and then we change it again at the end. Yeah. So we'll cover the towel, cover the thighs with a towel. Remember, we want to wring our washcloths out thoroughly. And we're going to clean the peri area in a very specific way. Now we're going to use that leaves method again. Do you guys remember the leaves method? Right? We have a washcloth folded in half and folded in half again. Now for the test, we're doing this on a female mannequin. And that's because in a female, your urethra, the tube that goes from your bladder to the outside world, is only as long as your pinky. That's it. That is a day trip for bacteria. No problem. No problem. Now, you've got some white blood cells in the area that when a bacteria or two stumble in, they're able to get them out. Doesn't cause a problem. But if we bring bacteria up by the busload, they're going to overwhelm our defenses. So the way we wipe is important with females. Male peri-care covered in your book. You'll see it on page 154 in the second column. Talks about male peri-care. Male peri-care, pretty easy. You just wash what you see. Start at the top, go down the shaft, clean the scrotum. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. If the male is uncircumcised, retract the foreskin first, clean under it, and then put everything back where you found it. Okay? Everything back where you found it. And that keeps engorgement problems from occurring. Okay? All right. Okay, so when we're doing female peri-care and we have our washcloth, we're going to put it in our hand with our leaves at the top, tuck our two side corners in. And I'm going to start in the middle. Now, I need to hold her open just a little bit with my fingers to get down the middle. So I'm going to go from top to bottom down the middle. Never go back up. Don't do that. It's top to bottom, pull away, fold over. Now we're going to go down the outside, top to bottom down the outside, fold over. Top to bottom down the other outside, fold over. This area here between the leg and the groin, that little crease, we're going to go top to bottom down the crease, fold that over. And with the back side, we'll go top to bottom down that crease. Whatever we wash, we rinse. And we always do that the same way. So rinsing washcloth, different washcloth. I'm going to go top to bottom, fold it over, down one side, fold it over, down the other side, fold it over, skin fold it over, skin fold. Whatever we rinse, we dry. So we take that towel that's over their legs and just pat dry, top to bottom. I never go back up.
Personal experience. Remember to be gentle when you're wiping.
Yes.
That's a super sensitive area.
Yes. Be very gentle. Mm-hmm. Very gentle. Okay. Remember, it's a one-way trip. And then we dry top to bottom. We'll remove that towel, unroll the blanket, and now we're going to scoot the patient toward us so that we can turn them over. Because remember, their butt has been laying on that wet pad. We've got to clean the backside. So we'll scoot them toward us, roll them on their side, and then we're going to clean the backside using a new washcloth and the leaves method. So leaves at the top. I'm going to go right up the center crease. We'll fold that over. I'm going to wash one cheek, fold that over. Wash the other cheek, fold that over. And then once more up that center crease because it kind of acts as a riverbed for the urine. Okay. And then I'm going to set that aside. Whatever we wash, we the exact same way. The exact same way. So new washcloth, hold it in my hand. Once up the middle, fold it over. One cheek, fold it over. The other cheek, fold it over. Once more up the middle. Set that aside. Whatever we rinse, we dry. So I'm going to take that towel and just pat dry going up. Okay? Good? Good. And then now that I got a clean butt, let's put a clean pad under the patient. So the one that's there, we're going to roll toward the patient. We're going to take clean one, roll it toward us, and change that pad.
You have to like actually get in there though.
Yes, you got to get in the crease. Yes.
And this
Yep.
time you're going upside.
Away from the rectum.
Would be like lifting the leg to make it easy so people have more behind than others?
Yeah, you're going to have to accommodate based on the size of the patient. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And then we'll change that pad again.
Miss Patty, is there a reason why after you do peri-care, like sometimes the smell of urine still persists on the patient? Like I've had that problem with home healthy patients. They see after I do the wiping, they're clean in the areas they're supposed to, but there's still a residual urine still smell. Does that mean there's still urine like somewhere on them, like in their wheels? Like
Yes, it's either the sheets, the bed, which the mattress can, absorb urine smells. It could have traveled up their back to an area you did not get. It could be on the medical equipment. It could just be in the environment. Yeah.
search for it to try to.
I would. I would.
Patients are pretty persistent. Like the towels that they sit on in their wheelchair, like I could tell if they had an odor, and I'm like, "Can I change that towel for you?" And they're like, "No." So do you tell them about the acid on the towel and the bed sore possibility? I mean, how?
Yeah, every
I
situation.
find it a lot.
Yeah, every situation is going to be different. And I can't give you one answer that's going to accomplish all situations. So let me give you a couple of options. Okay. So if I've got a towel on a wheelchair that definitely has an odor to it that needs to be clean, I am going to say, I'm going to put this in the laundry. Let me get you a new towel. I don't ask. I'm going to say. Now, if they insist, if they say, no, leave that towel alone, that's the one I want, can I put a pad over it then? Okay, I'm going to try to problem solve that a little bit. But most of the time, I'm not really going to give them much of an option when it comes to this because I want to keep their skin clean. Some people are a little bit entrenched in their habits, okay, and it takes a little working around to get them where you need them to be. But I'm going to approach each one of those situations differently based on the personality of the patient. Some patients, I might explain what's happening and why I need to do this. But for the vast majority, they're not going to care. They don't want to know how the cake is made. They just want to eat the cake, So in a lot of cases, I would just say, let me take this away. I'm going to get you a new towel. Okay. Here's something that you don't understand that I need you to kind of get real quick. Patients often refuse skills because they think that it's too much to ask. They don't want to be a burden. They don't want you to have to spend a lot of time with them. So if you ask, can I do this? A lot of times they'll say no, thinking they're sparing you. It's not sparing you. So in those situations, especially when you have a patient that refuses a lot of things, you kind of have to get into their psyche and figure out why they're refusing it. And a lot of times it's because of that. They don't want to be a burden. These are fiercely independent people. Okay. Think about the age group that we're working with. These are fiercely independent people. They don't want to have your help. And as much as they can minimize it, they will. But that's to their detriment. So I always try to, when I'm working with these types of patients, I try to couch this in a way that makes it sound like they're doing me a favor. Okay? Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you kind of work them around, you'll get further with them. But you kind of have to understand the psyche behind why they're refusing. Okay? All right. So Kimberly says, can you enroll in the online course if you live in Wisconsin? Great question, Kimberly. The answer is yes and no. I know that's helpful, isn't it? Okay, yes, anybody can enroll in the online program. It's open to the world. Whoever wants to enroll is fine. The problem is that it will not permit testing. It is not enough to qualify you for the test. Here in Florida, we're allowed to test as challengers. and other states require that you go through a CNA program. So yes, you can enroll in the online. If you've taken a CNA program, you're getting ready to test and you need that little bit of extra instruction, that extra practice, the extra knowledge. Yes, it's absolutely available to you. But if you have not taken a course, you can take the online course, but just be aware that it doesn't qualify you for testing. I want to be very clear on that. I never want to mislead anybody. Very important. Oh, no. Can you do me a huge favor? Go to the next door over and ask the man that's going to answer the door for toilet paper because it's in that room. Okay. I apologize for that. Yes, I'm glad you looked too. All right, so everything dirty goes in soiled linens. We're going to clean our basin like we clean everything else. We rinse it, we dry it, we store it. And then we'll remove our gloves and take our blanket away. Perform our closing. So let me show you this video. It has good close-ups, which you're going to need to see. I know this is an uncomfortable skill. I get it. Nobody wants to do this. Nobody wants to watch it. I understand that. But this is a very common skill that's going to need to be performed. So this is one that, although you're uncomfortable, it's probably the most personal skill that we do. Although feeding actually is more intimate, because feeding is the very first skill you become independent at. When you lose the ability to feed yourself, it affects you psychologically. Think about that. So feeding is way more intimate than this, but this is the one we get uncomfortable with. Don't let that discomfort prevent you from practicing. Okay. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Wonderful. I need to do peri-care. Is that okay? Okay, let me close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to start out with a barrier. This gives me a clean place to place my clean supplies. So I'll place the barrier on the overbed table. And now I'll start gathering my supplies. I'm going to need 2 chucks, 4 washcloths, a privacy blanket, a towel. I'll place these items on the overbed table. I'll need a basin and soap. And I'm going to need a set of gloves. Okay, Miss Jones, let me go fill the basin. I'll use a paper towel to turn the water on. I'll make sure it's warm. Not hot, not cold, just warm. Miss Jones, would you like to check the water temperature and make sure it's okay? It's good? Good. I'll place my washcloths in the water. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to place this privacy blanket over you. This is going to help keep you warm and protect your privacy while we do this skill. I'm going to spread the blanket out, being careful not to shake it or snap it. And then I'm going to pull your sheet down to about your knees. Now I'll get my chucks ready for use. I'm going to unfold the chucks, hold it up lengthwise, and roll it toward me. And I'll repeat that with the second one. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. Now I'll get my gloves on. Okay, Miss Jones, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can change the chucks that's under you. I'll place one of the chucks on the bed. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? Thank you. And roll up on your left side. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to roll the dirty chucks toward the patient. Tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean one and tuck it under the soiled. Miss Jones, can you roll back onto your back, please? Thank you. And scoot to the middle of the bed. Okay, I'll come around to the other side of the bed now. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. We'll remove the soiled chucks from the bed and unroll the clean one. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Miss Jones, we're going to start cleaning now. I'm going to roll your blanket up to about your waist. This is going to expose you. Please let me know if you're uncomfortable in any way. So I'll roll the blanket up, and on the way I'm going to try to get that gown rolled inside the blanket so that exposes only the peri area. I'll cover her upper legs with a towel, and then get my first washcloth. I'm going to wring this out and soak 5 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to clean now. I'll use the heel of my hand at the top of her peri area and my index and middle finger to spread her slightly open so I can clean down the inside middle, top to bottom, and then we'll fold that leaf over. We're going to clean the outside labia, top to bottom, down one side, and fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the labia, top to bottom, fold that leaf over. The fourth leaf is going to clean this area between the leg and the groin, this skin fold, top to bottom. We're going to fold that over, and we'll repeat it on this side, top to bottom. Now we'll place the washcloth back on the barrier. The second washcloth, we're going to wring out, and we're going to rinse all of those areas the same way we washed. So we're going to hold her slightly open to clean down the middle, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse down one side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. Rinse the other side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse the skin fold down one side, top to bottom. Fold that over. And the other skin fold, top to bottom. We'll set that aside. Now we're going to dry all of those areas using short, soft strokes or a gentle pat. I'm going to unroll the blanket, which will place her gown back over her legs. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to scoot you toward me now, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can clean your back side. Go ahead and scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you over onto your left side. 1, 2, 3. The evaluator will hold the mannequin in place for you to complete your cleaning of the patient's backside. Okay, I'm going to take the fourth washcloth, wring it out really well, and we're going to soak 4 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to start at the anal opening and go up the center crease, right up the middle, and we'll fold that leaf over. The second leaf will clean one buttocks. We're going to fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the buttocks. We'll fold that leaf over. And the fourth leaf will clean from the anal opening up the center crease one last time. We're going to set that aside. Whatever we wash, we rinse. So I'll wring that out. And I'm going to rinse the same way we washed. So from the anal opening up the center crease, fold that over. One buttocks, fold that over. The other side of the buttocks, fold that over. And once more up the center crease. And then we'll dry all of those areas. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to change that pad out from under you so you're on a nice clean pad. We'll roll the soiled chucks toward the patient and tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean chucks and tuck it under the soiled. Ms. Jones, come on back, please. And scoot to the middle. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jones, go ahead and scoot toward me. And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. We'll remove the soiled chucks from the bed and unroll the clean. Okay. Go ahead and scoot back to the middle, please. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, I need to put all of my soiled items away and clean my basin. I'll be back in just a moment to get you situated. These items will go in dirty linen. And the basin is going to be cleaned the same way we clean everything else. We'll dump the water into the sink. Rinse the basin. Pick it up with a paper towel and dry the inside. We'll discard that paper towel. We'll dry the outside and discard that paper towel. And then we'll get the soap. I'll use the paper towel to open the drawer and store the basin back inside. These paper towels will now be thrown away. The barrier is going to be disposed of. And now I can remove my gloves. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm now going to gather the privacy blanket up and pull your sheet back up. So I'll collect the privacy blanket by lifting from the bottom or underside of the blanket. I'm going to pull the sheet up and ball the blanket up into a ball. That way no trailing edges will contaminate other surfaces. Okay, Ms. Jones, let me go put this in dirty linen. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here, like a magazine? Okay, here's your call light. If you should need anything at all, please let me know. I'm going to go open your curtain and wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then let the evaluator know when my skill is done.
All right. Any questions on peri-care? Over the weekend, you have 2 chapters, chapters 8 and 9. 8 is going to be on, change that. 8 is going to be on nutrition. It's kind of it's a short chapter, but it's kind of dense. It's got some information in it. You do need to know the different diets. You don't need to know what condition they're used for, but you do need to know different diets. And then 9 is going to be on rehabilitation. And remember, we talked a little bit about that today. Our goal is to help our patients gain independence. So rehabilitation is going to be a lot of what we do. So kind of pay attention to chapter 9, okay?
The supplies you needed for the skill be listed on the care plan?
No.
Evaluation?
No, the supplies for, none of the supplies for any skill will be listed on the care plan. You have to know your supplies, yeah. And that's where the flashcards come in, because I actually have a flashcard for every single skill with all the supplies on it. I have all the principles, and we also have steps for each one of the skills as well. So it covers those flashcards cover all the bases. If you've listened to the program, the flashcards make sense.
So they're $14.99. Is that right?
$14.99 through next Wednesday. Okay. Sure. Just see me after class. Any questions on what we've gone over so far? Any questions? Okay. BLS class will be on Monday afternoon. So if you don't have your CPR for medical professionals, it's called BLS.
If you don't have your CPR, you don't need it for the class, you don't need it for the test, but you will need it to work. And as long as up until through graduation, it's only $45. After graduation, it goes up to $55. So because you're going to need this to work in most settings, you might want to get it while it's on sale. Okay. So Monday from 2 to 6 is when, so we're going to teach Monday until 1. And then from 2 to 6, you'll stay for the CPR class and you'll get certification that day.
Do you have a first aid portion?
I don't right now.
Do you have a referral?
That was
Because I'm
my next
finding
question.
any,
Yeah.
they're asking, a lot of jobs are asking for first aid care and wound care.
Yeah, so first aid will include immediate wound care, not long-term wound care. I don't, because I haven't gotten my certification to teach that yet. Julie at CPR Rescue does that.
She's here in Spring Hill.
She's in Spring Hill. I don't know how often she does it. Marie says my niece passed the skills and I hope she'll pass the knowledge. Well, congratulations. Okay, so remember CPR is coming up. I just handed out all of your review sheets. Faith asks, do I also do LPN? No, I don't. I concentrate 100% of my energy on CNA. So that's where my focus is. Because if I can give you all the information to make you exceptional CNAs, do you know what that's going to do when you go to school to become an LPN or an RN?
Make you an exceptional LPN.
That's exactly it. So I spend all of my time on foundation.
So how long is the CPR class?
4 hours.
Okay.
She got us out with about what, 3.5?
Yeah. Yeah, I try to get you out a little quick, depending on how many people I have. All right, so you have your review sheet. That will help you kind of sum up what we went over in class. On Monday, we have 3 final skills to do, plus we'll bring in the range of motion, elbow, and wrist, which we haven't gotten to yet. I haven't forgotten. And then Wednesday is graduation. So I have a whole lot to tell you on graduation. I'm not just going to, kick you out the door. There's a lot we still have to go over, including how to renew your certification, how to get your continuing education credits, what to do during interviews, and I'm going to, when you go for an interview and they ask you that question, tell me a little bit about yourself. And everybody freezes, right? I'm actually going to give you a formula that you can use to answer that question. And we're going to craft our tell me about yourself questions during class on graduation. So you will already know what to say when you get that question. And it's going to sound so good that they can't help but hire you.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm going to help you with that on graduation. So we have a lot of stuff coming up next week. We're nowhere near ready to end yet. I still have a long way to go with you. But I want you to take a few minutes this weekend to reflect on how far you have come. Because you have come a long way in 3 weeks. And I don't want you to lose sight of that. I'm super proud of all of you. You're doing a fantastic job. Okay, so that's going to end today's lesson. Hope to see you guys here on Monday and again on Wednesday. If you didn't catch the game show, you might want to go back and watch that game show. There's 15 practice questions on there, very similar to what you would see on the state exam. So if you didn't catch it live, go back and watch the replay. It will help you. And you can go back and watch all the replays. There's over 200, 300 questions in there.
So you go to foryourcna.com and how do you access
No,
that game show?
Go to youtube.com
Oh, okay.
/foryourCNA.
Okay.
And then just look for the playlist that says game show.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So those of you online, we'll catch you next week. Until next time, happy caregiving. Bye.